Hi guys, it's me, HD, and welcome to race day in Baku. Hope you guys are well after what was a pretty chaotic qualifying session yesterday. Not in terms of red flags or anything like that, but it just didn't end up anywhere close to what we thought it would end up like in terms of the order. Red Bull at the end of qualifying completely falling apart. Lando Norris, of course, getting knocked out in Q1. It just didn't play out at all how we were expecting, which, to be honest, is great. That's how ideally you would like it to be in qualifying and in Formula One in general. To be completely surprised, and I was, and I think probably some of you were as well as to what happened yesterday. And I think the grid that we've got for today is, I wouldn't say perfectly set up for a great race, but I think it's set up nicely for definitely a competitive one. Not necessarily for the win, but definitely for the podium positions and the few, top positions outside of the podium. So, yeah, it should be a competitive race, should be interesting at least. Whether we get a lot of overtaking, we'll have to wait and see. As I've said before, when it comes to Baku, we need chaos to have a great race here. We need, two or three safety cars, stuff like that to have a great race in Baku. If we don't get that and we only get a safety car, lap one, lap two, whatever, then it probably won't end up being that good of a race and probably will be, a 5 or 6 out of 10 at best. Because if you look at all the Azerbaijan Grand Prix we've had since, 2016, the only good ones are the ones where we had multiple safety cars, 2017, 2018, and 2021. Every other race here in Baku has been average or pretty bad. Last year's race here in Baku was one of the worst we had in 2023, which is something I really hope we don't get today. But yeah, my theory still stands that we don't, or you can't have a naturally good race around this track. You need those safety cars or red flags for it to, for it to be something great. I hope I'm wrong today, but I doubt that I will be. But let's see what ends up happening here in Baku. Yeah, interesting grid. We'll get into all of that stuff in a moment. Just want to say hi to you guys. Hope you're doing well after qualifying yesterday. And hope you'll be joining me and Nib, who will be joining us later on in about an hour and 20 from now. Hope you'll be joining us to enjoy and watch along the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. A race that promises, again, an interesting battle in certain positions, but not necessarily a great race. But obviously, still many things up for grabs in 2024. Constructors' Championship, the top three teams separated by 39 points. Drivers' Championship, of course, the gap is 62 points. Max Verstappen, the championship leader, looking likely to extend his lead today, but there is no guarantees here in Baku. So, yeah, plenty to be decided on that front. But, yeah, hope you guys are well, no matter what time zone you're in, part of the world you're from. Hope you're all doing well on what is a very nice Sunday morning for me in my part of the UK. The weather has been very beautiful, I have to say, in the UK as of late. And, yeah, can't wait to get into this race in just under 2 hours from now. Of course, I've got a poll running in the live chat, and I've asked you guys, as usual, who do you think will win the Azerbaijan Grand Prix today? Will it be Charles Leclerc, Oscar Piastri, Max Verstappen, or George Russell? Let me know in that poll. And right before we get into the race, I will make sure to finish up those results and we'll see who you guys think will be the winner of the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. But as usual, We're going to go through the build-up here, go through what happened yesterday and get through the data of what happened yesterday, just to understand why qualifying ended up the way it did. Then I'll get into the long-run race sim data from Friday, which is interesting to say the least. Definitely when it comes to the silver arrows, I'll just tease that. And then based on that and what we saw yesterday and what we've seen so far this weekend in general, I will then get into my race predictions for this Azerbaijan Grand Prix. And then obviously I'll hear from you guys and read out some of your comments before the race to see what you guys think ahead of lights out in Baku. And then of course we'll bring Nib on, get his thoughts, and then we'll get into the race itself. And if there is no safety cars, which I was last year the only race here in Baku we've not had a safety car. I think we may have had a safety car last year. I can't remember. Yeah, we did actually have a safety car. We did. It was around, I think, lap 15 or something. So yeah, every race here in Baku, I'm pretty sure, has had a safety car. Maybe except the first one in 2016. But yeah, even if there is a safety car, normally there is, a safety car in lap 1. This race should be a pretty fast race. It's only, 50, 51 laps? So, yeah, should be a pretty fast one here in Baku. But let me come away from this and let's get into what happened yesterday and get into the makeup of the grid, because there has been some changes since qualifying yesterday. And even this morning, there has been news of penalties, especially for one of the top teams. So here are the results of qualifying. Here is the top 10. Charles Leclerc on pole, and he got pole by 1/3 of a second, 3/10 of a second clear of Piastri. Thoroughly deserved pole. He was easily the best driver out there on Saturday. Once again, the best driver on Saturday. That's 4 pole positions in a row for Leclerc. I don't know why at this point we even bet against the guy. I bet against him, and he proved me wrong emphatically. So yeah, brilliant by Leclerc. But in those 3 previous races, he, has not won this race. Last year was actually the best race he's had from starting on pole here in Baku, where he finished in 3rd, only just about 3rd ahead of Fernando Alonso in the Aston Martin. Shows how long ago that race was, in 2023, year and a half ago. And yeah, 2022, maybe could have won that race, but his engine blew up. And then 2021, his car wasn't quick enough to win, and he ended up finishing in, was it 4th place or 5th place? Something like that in the end, did Leclerc. So if he's going to win in Baku, you would think today will be that day, especially when you consider, one, how quick Ferrari have been this weekend, but also how quick lately they've been in the races compared to qualifying. They've been even quicker on race day than they've been in qualifying. And if that continues today, Ferrari might be even able to get a 1-2 finish, which would be really good for the Constructors' Championship. Remember, Ferrari 39 points behind Red Bull, and then McLaren in second. They're 31 points behind them. So who's to say Ferrari can't win the Constructors' Championship? Obviously, the last championship they won was the Constructors in 2008, 16 years ago, and there is a chance they could do it this year if they keep up their really strong form. Anyway, Piastri second, great job by him, doing the best job he could. I don't think pole position was on offer for him, because I just don't think the McLaren car was quick enough to be on pole position. But Piastri, if he's going to win this Grand Prix, he's still put himself in a very good position. And, McLaren, we have to remember their race pace does tend to be pretty strong as well. Maybe not as strong as their qualifying pace, but it is still strong. So Piastri in a good position, and we'll see if he can avenge what happened in Monza, where Piastri really should have won, but then, had it took away from him because McLaren decided to go for that two-stopper, and obviously Ferrari and Leclerc went for the one-stop strategy. Carlos Sainz third, he also did a great job, considering he's never really been that quick here, but he's got a good position there on the grid. Sergio Perez fourth, very close he was, Perez, to getting third. George Russell fifth, Max Verstappen in sixth. Red Bull, shockingly poor in Q3. Full credit to Leclerc and Ferrari for getting pole, but we have to say that Red Bull did not show their full hand in Q3. Because you have to remember, in Q2, Max did 1:42.0, and then in Q3, Max was only able to do, I think, a 1:41.9. Or actually, no, it wasn't that. It was a 1:42.0 again. So Max, not able to improve at all on what he did in Q2. And obviously, normally there would be like a, say around this track, a half a second gain from Q2 to Q3. I mean, if you look at Ferrari, they had even more of a gain from Q2 to Q3. It was, I think, 3/4 of a second for them. So Red Bull definitely could have got, maybe not pole, but I think they definitely could have been on the front row with Verstappen. But Max put in 2 poor laps. Perez really as well didn't put in any good laps either, because he's been looking a lot quicker this weekend than, well, he was in Q3. So there is more in that Red Bull car, but whether they can show it today, we'll have to see. Be interesting to see. Lewis Hamilton 7th. He ended up 0.4 of a second behind his teammate, but Mercedes, I'm not sure if they've seen an issue on that power unit, but they have decided to fit Lewis Hamilton with a new power unit. Therefore, Lewis Hamilton will start today's race from the pit lane. And then, because of that, it'll be Fernando Alonso 7th, the Aston Martin, and Franco Colapinto will start in his second F1 race in 8th place here in Baku. Just an incredible story, that is. Colapinto 8th on the grid. Absolutely nobody, not even Colapinto himself, would have thought that possible for race day in Baku. So then it'll be Alex Albon 9th, and then Oliver Behrman will start in the top 10 for Haas. Good job Behrman did to outqualify his teammate Hülkenberg by a couple tenths of a second. And Behrman once again showing his real quality and why he clearly deserves to be on the grid for next year as a full-time driver. Tsunoda 12th. I think Tsunoda did a decent job for Racing Bulls and outqualifying his teammate by half a second. So yeah, great job there by Tsunoda. Hülkenberg 13th. Hülkenberg just didn't do a good enough final lap in Q2. Lance Stroll 14th. Poor effort from him. Poor effort from Ricciardo. And Lando Norris in 16th. There's been a bit of a debate, let's say, online as to, what happened at the end of Q1. Was it Lando's fault? Was it not? Looking back at the footage, I think it was probably Lando's fault. One, obviously making the mistake riding that exit curb way too hard and costing myself a lot of lap time. And then misjudging the flag system, because when he came across Ocon, who was going slowly, I don't think the yellow flags were showing, or if they were, it was very brief. And in my personal view, Lando, because it was up in the air as to, when exactly or for how long the yellows were showing, Lando should have gone absolutely flat out to the finish line, because he still would have improved on the lap time he'd done before, even with that mistake. And, if he had ended up getting a penalty for speeding on the yellow flags, and so be it. But he should have left it up to the stewards to decide whether he had done so. But he got it wrong, and he will start from 15th place because obviously of Lewis Hamilton's penalty. Penalty for taking a new power unit. So unless we get a mid-race safety car, Lando, I think the best you're going to see from him today is 7th place. And he's got to hope that Max Verstappen does not get on the podium, because realistically today, Max is going to outscore Lando by a few points. But if Max gets on the podium, say 3rd, and Lando finishes 7th, that's a gain of 9 points for Max, and that puts the gap back up to 71 points, which is 1 point more than the gap was before the Italian Grand Prix. And at that point, I think you'd have to say that Max is probably going to win the championship. So, yeah, we'll have to see how that all plays out. Valtteri Bottas then and Zhou Guanyu will be the last two cars on the grid today in 16th and 17th. Esteban Ocon also will be starting from the pit lane for taking a new power unit. And Pierre Gasly was disqualified from qualifying after qualifying 13th, I think, for a fuel irregularity. So he will start from the pit lane as well. So it'll be Lewis Hamilton and the two Alpine drivers of Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly starting from the pit lane. And then you'll have, 17 drivers on the grid, which should help there be, no lap 1 crashes. But we've seen lap 1 crashes high up the grid here before. So, yeah, we'll see what happens ultimately on the first lap. But that is your starting grid for the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Let's now get into the sector time data, just to understand, especially with the front-running teams, why it ended up in qualifying the way it did. So the first sector, you've got, long straights and 90-degree corners. Red Bull and Ferrari, the two top teams, no surprise here, and McLaren third best. It's not a surprise McLaren's pace there because, again, their car does not enjoy long straights and slow corners, and we've seen that type of pace from them the first sector, this weekend, anyway. So it's not a surprise, that pace. But what is a surprise is Mercedes being 0.4 of a second slow in the first sector. And that right there is why George Russell is only 5th when he could be 2nd or 3rd on the grid. Because that Mercedes car, as we'll get into with the long run data from Friday, that Mercedes car is quite a bit quicker than where it is on the grid, especially with Russell. So, yeah, Mercedes, I think, will be very disappointed in their effort yesterday. They should have been, at minimum, 1/4 of a second faster in the first sector. But you could even argue they should be right there with Red Bull and Ferrari, because there's no reason why they shouldn't be pretty quick in that first sector. But they were pretty slow. Good pace for Haas, good pace for Aston Martin and Williams. Decent pace from Alpine as well with their low downforce wings. And then Sauber and Racing Bulls right at the back. Racing Bulls pretty poor, I have to say, in that first sector, which might explain why Tsunoda didn't get in the top 10. Sector 2, though, shows why Ferrari have been so quick this weekend and why they ended up on pole. And we'll get into in the speed trap data more so why they were able to be so quick in the middle sector, because they were the kings through this middle sector, which again is full of slow corners. 1/10.5 quicker than the next car of McLaren, and 0.2 of a second quicker than Red Bull. For Red Bull, though, if you remember back on Friday, they were 1/10 or 1/10.5 quicker than the next best team in practice too. So this is the part of the track where Red Bull cost themselves in qualifying, because in the first sector, they were top in the first sector. But again, this middle sector, this is where it all went wrong. If they were as quick as they were compared to the other teams on Friday, if they were like that yesterday in Q3, then Perez would have been probably on the front row and Max would have been, what, third or fourth at minimum for Red Bull, which would be a lot better of a grid position for them going into this race. But middle sector, they just didn't get right in qualifying. They didn't, especially in Q3, were not able to get it right. And that's why they've ended up where they've ended up. Mercedes, again, lacking a bit of time there. I think they should be at least a tenth of a second better in this middle sector. So yeah, Mercedes, I think, definitely could have done much more than what they showed. Williams, once again, the best midfield team in the middle sector. We saw that in practice, and they've shown that once again. So impressive speed through the middle sector. Racing Bulls looking better, which is good. Aston Martin, though, very poor. Aston Martin should be comfortably the best midfield team in the middle sector. And for them to be that, they'd need to be basically 0.3 of a second quicker with, with Alonso. And it's funny, because if Alonso was in qualifying 0.3 of a second quicker, he would have actually out-qualified Lewis Hamilton and would have, on merit, been 7th on the grid. So it shows you that with Aston Martin, they're not, they're still, quite a bit off, obviously, the front-running teams, but if they just delivered in corners or parts of certain tracks where they should do, they delivered the pace you would expect from them, they would still be, kind of in the mix. But this middle sector being as poor as it was, that's why Aston Martin were, not in the mix, really. And then Haas, pretty bad middle sector, I have to say. And then Alpine, a second off in the middle sector, and Sauber, 1.5 seconds behind the quickest team, being the Ferrari. Same powered team, yet 1.5 seconds back. That is pure grip. That's the difference between the Ferrari and the Sauber. And of course, Leclerc better than Bottas. And then the final sector, you can't really read too much into it because some drivers got a really good toe in the, final sector. But here you go. Alonso was quickest in the Aston Martin. Mercedes did a good final sector. And their speed down the straights has been decent, I would say, at times. Williams looking good as well. Red Bull not too bad. McLaren okay. Racing Bulls okay. Sauber okay. Ferrari, though, as we'll get onto with the speed trap data, with them 8th best in the final sector, which again, the final sector is literally flat out, except that one final corner. Ferrari, I'm pretty sure, have added a bit more downforce to their car, a bit more wing to their car, and that's why I think they were so quick in this middle sector, because in Friday practice, they looked quick, but where Red Bull had the advantage on them was in the middle sector, because Red Bull were like a tenth and a half quicker, and I think that's why Ferrari probably put a bit more wing on, and that's why, ultimately, they ended up on pole position and had the fastest car in qualifying. And if we go to the speed trap data, you can see with Ferrari, they were the second slowest with the speed trap. This speed trap data, by the way, collected from the start-finish line in qualifying. So yeah, Ferrari, the second slowest, clearly pointing to them putting a bit more wing on their car. But yeah, these speed traps, Racing Bulls and Williams looking strong. Not really a surprise. They've been strong with their straight line speed as of late. We saw that 2 weeks ago at Monza, which of course is a power track. Mercedes, though, who have got more pace in the bag, definitely watch out for them, because if they do get within a second of a Red Bull or a McLaren or a Ferrari, just look at the difference in kilometers per hour they have over those teams compared to Red Bull, 4 kilometers an hour, pretty much 4 kilometers an hour to McLaren, and about 5 kilometers an hour to Ferrari. So if they get DRS on one of those 3 teams, Mercedes are going to be very fast down the straights. Sauber, just showing how pathetic they are. Good top speed, yet absolutely no grip in the corners. Exactly what we saw 2 weeks ago at Monza, where their top speed was really good, but they had no grip in the corners. Aston Martin's top speed is pretty good. Red Bull's is okay. Clearly put a bit more wing on than they probably would do at other times. Haas, bit surprising with them that they're a bit low down, but maybe they've just put a bit more wing on to protect their tyres today. McLaren, not really surprised with them being low down. And then, Ferrari, I'm pretty sure they put a bit more wing on their car, and that's why they've, ended up on pole. And that's why I think today they will probably have the best pace in the race today. Well, maybe not the best pace in the race today, but they should have enough pace, definitely, to win this Azerbaijan Grand Prix. But talking of race pace, let's get on to the long runs from Friday. And as you can see there, Mercedes-Benz incredibly quick in the long runs from Friday. Now, just to add some context, Lewis Hamilton did his long run on the hard compound tyre. And for the race, the hard compound tyre is going to be the best race tyre. So he did have a clear advantage using that tyre compared to everyone else who did their long run, I believe, on the medium compound tyre. So once you make the tyre adjustment, I think Hamilton probably, the hard tyre compared to the medium per lap, I'd probably say 4 to 5 tenths of a second better. Red Bull, Ferrari, and McLaren definitely a lot closer to the pace of the Mercedes. But still, that pace from Mercedes, that average lap time of 1:48.3 on that compound, is still a very good speed on that compound of tyres. So, with the top speed they've got and the race pace they appear to have, watch out for Mercedes-Benz, because I think in clear air, if they get enough clear air in this race, they might be able to utilize it to maybe get onto the podium. I don't think a win is possible for them. I think they're a bit too far back. If they had delivered, though, in that first sector, if they had been 2 or 3 tenths quicker, Russell would have been probably, third on the grid, maybe even on the front row. And if he was in those positions, then I think Russell probably would have a properly good chance of winning today. But again, too low down on the grid, I think, to fully utilize that great pace. But Red Bull, their race pace, pretty good. Ferrari's is pretty good compared to Red Bull's and McLaren's. McLaren, just struggling around this track. Williams, pretty good in the midfield there. Alpine's quite a bit better than what we saw in their, their qualifying pace, which is not really a surprise. They always tend to be quicker with heavier fuel on board. Haas's race pace looks decent, and they've got Sauber and Racing Bulls not good really at all. And Aston Martin, the worst of all the teams, which I honestly don't think we'll see today. I would be amazed if Aston Martin were 1 second per lap slower than Williams in the race today. If that does happen, though, then Williams really should be aiming to finish, if Hamilton and Norris do come through and overtake them, then Williams should be aiming to finish 9th and 10th if they do have that pace advantage over Aston Martin. And, if they do have the best pace of the midfield. We'll have to see, though, if that turns out to be the case. But I would be amazed if Aston Martin are genuinely that slow. But with all that data, before we get on to my race predictions, let's just quickly go through what I think the pecking order from qualifying was yesterday, because I think it is similar probably to what we're going to see in the race today. So Ferrari, I think you'd have to say, were the quickest in qualifying. I mean, Red Bull, they didn't show their full hand in Q3, but what they could have done we don't know. We just don't know what they, you know, really could have done in Q3. So, yeah, I'd say Ferrari the quickest. Red Bull, I think, were at least second quickest in qualifying. Again, they just didn't deliver the laps. And then after that, you'd probably have to say McLaren third, Mercedes fourth. And then, honestly, I think Williams were probably quicker than Aston Martin in qualifying. Alex Albon, who ended up in P10, will start P9 today with Lewis Hamilton starting from the pit lane. I think, with Albon, he had that airbox thing, didn't he? At the very end of qualifying, which prevented him from being able to start a final lap. If he was able to have done a final lap, I think Albon would have qualified in 8th place. Because if Colapinto could get, a 10th and a half behind, I think Albon could have ended up in 8th place, maybe even 7th place, because Lewis Hamilton, you can see, wasn't that far away. So I would say Williams were the fastest midfield team yesterday, just ahead of Aston Martin. Alonso, by the way, still did a great job. And then after that, you'd have to say Haas, probably 7th best team. And then Racing Bulls, Sauber, Alpine, and then Sauber. Sauber were horrific. And look at Zhou Guanyu, by the way. 0.6 of a second slower than Bottas. How on earth is this guy, Zhou Guanyu, how on earth is there still discussions about him maybe being on the grid next year? How? I don't get it. But that's what I thought the pecking order was from qualifying. And I think most of that pecking order will be the same today in the race. Maybe except in a couple positions with the front 4 teams. But let me get into, after all that data, all that stuff, let me get into my final prediction for the race today. And one thing I will say is the gaps I've gone for might be a bit ambitious, but the order I've gone for, I am pretty confident will be correct. Charles Leclerc, I think, will take his 2nd consecutive win and his 3rd win of 2024 and finally deliver a win in Baku. And I do think he will win comfortably over the McLaren of Piastri, because I do think the Ferrari is genuinely faster in all conditions compared to the McLaren. So Piastri, I think, will finish in 2nd. Just ahead of George Russell 3rd. Mercedes will be quick today, and that's why I think he will take the podium, Russell, because in clear air, Russell, I think I will have a lot of pace. And I think once Russell, if he can get past Perez early on, which I think he can, because Russell, is good enough and aggressive enough to be able to do that. If he does that early and then, gets after Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari, I think he has plenty of time to be able then to overtake him and then take 3rd place and maybe even apply some pressure to Piastri in 2nd. But again, watch out for Russell in the Mercedes. He is the driver for me to watch out for in this race, given how good Mercedes' race pace is. Max Verstappen then, I think, will finish in 4th. Carlos Sainz, I'm going in 5th. Perez then in 6th. Now, this prediction was made before Lewis Hamilton's penalty was announced. So, because of that, I now will swap around Lando Norris and Lewis Hamilton. I think Norris will finish 7th instead of 8th. And then Lewis Hamilton, I'm going to go in 8th. And I think both drivers will be about 20 to 25 seconds behind, Sainz and Perez there. And then 9th, I am going Fernando Alonso. Because again, I think Aston Martin will be a lot quicker than what we saw with that race pace data. And Alex Albon, I think, will be P10. But again, if Williams prove to be as quick today as they were on Friday with those long runs, then really Williams should finish 9th and 10th with Albon and Colapinto. And we'll see if that does happen for those drivers. But we, let me just quickly go back to this screen, as we have got, what, an hour and 24 minutes, I think, to go until the race gets underway. So let me just wait until the next minute ticks over, and then I will get the timer back on screen. There you go. And yeah, actually no, that's the wrong minute. Let me quickly adjust that. There you go. So about an hour and 24 minutes to go until the race begins in Baku. By the way, there was a massive start line crash in Baku earlier with the F2 race. I think there was a couple cars stranded on the grid, and then inevitably someone behind smashed into the back of them and caused a massive pile-up. But thankfully, the track's fine, no delays, nothing like that. But the final thing we're going to get onto before I come to your comments in the chat. By the way, make sure to get your comments in chat, because I will be reading them out soon enough. And also, make sure to smash a like button. Really does help the channel grow and helps us in the algorithm. So it'd be great if you could do that. Yeah, let me just quickly let you guys know what the strategy options are for today, because Pirelli, of course, a couple hours ago would have announced what the strategy options are for this Azerbaijan Grand Prix, and it should be a one-stop race, even though we have the three softest compounds at this Grand Prix, the C5, C4, C3. I think it should be still a one-stop race. And yeah, according to Pirelli, the quickest strategy today is to start on the medium compound tyre, pit between lap 14 and 24, quite a wide pit window, I have to say, and then go on to the hard compound tyre and finish the race from there. Or you could start on the hard tyre, pit between lap 27 and 37, again a wide pit window, and then go on to a set of mediums to finish the race. I do think either Hamilton or Norris will go for that hard to medium strategy, because it is a strategy, especially with a race that could see a safety car, you know, in the middle of it. That's a strategy that could well pay off. But there is a two-stop option, according to Pirelli, which is to start on the medium, pit between laps 7 and 15, then go on to a set of hard tyres and pit again between lap 24 and 32. That strategy, I think, is only doable if you have the ability to overtake down the straights. If you don't quite have enough straight line speed to get the job definitely done down that straight, you know, the long pit straight, then I don't think a two-stop is worthwhile, because obviously, you know, if you pit, say, lap 10, you're going to have to make your way through traffic. I mean, even if, let's say you were Leclerc on pole, if you pit on lap 10, you're going to have to make your way through probably a couple midfield runners and then probably a couple front runners at the back of that front running pack. And it won't be so easy. So, yeah, I think a one-stop race is what I think we'll see today. It's normally what we see here. Two-stop strategy is just not... It's not worthwhile. It's too risky. You have to have like an incredible amount of pace, you know, pace differential compared to the one-stop runners to be able to pull it off. You have to have like at least a second and a half per lap, and definitely be able to overtake down the pit straight without any issue. If you have that, then maybe you could pull it off, but again, it's pretty hard to do because if you pit earlier than someone else, if that person ahead of you who hasn't stopped yet, if they keep getting a really good exit from the final corner and they've got good straight line speed, then it can prove hard to overtake and get through the pack. And that is again what hurts people that go for a two-stop strategy. As as I'm just seeing on the Sky F1, they're doing a analysis of Leclerc's pole position lap. But that's all my analysis, guys. Let's get into what you guys have to say. And we'll go through, I think, some of your comments for probably the next half an hour. And then, before I bring Nib on, my co-commentator, of course, for today, I will go through the teams and go through, how I think they'll get on individually. And most importantly, go through strategy options for the teams. Because again, Hamilton and Norris in the Mercedes and McLaren, respectively, might be going for something a bit different today. But Carluccio says morning. The human Pokedex is getting suspiciously weird now. How many times Lewis Hamilton's tires aren't warmed up by the team correctly? It's getting too weird to be overlooked now. I don't think his tires not being up to temperature has always been the reason that Lewis has not performed in qualifying. I mean, 2 weeks ago at Monza, I don't think he mentioned that at all. So it's not always the reason. But the thing is with tyre warm-up is, it's the team's job to warm them up and make sure they're in good condition. But let's remember as well, the driver also, has the ability to help that. It's not all down to the team. I mean, if they've left them too cold, even if the driver, tries to warm them up, if they're still too cold, then that's the team's fault. But we don't know how cold exactly maybe the team left them. So, Lewis Hamilton, you could argue, may have still been able to warm them up a bit more, for that qualifying lap. But if you look at yesterday, the first lap he complained about cold tyres, but he had a lap after that where he was still slow and was 0.4 of a second off the pace of his teammate. So it's not like he had one effort that was messed up. I mean, I don't know if he did complain about cold tyres for the second run, but I don't think that issue is... I don't think that's why Lewis, has been struggling in qualifying. I think if you ask Lewis, he would probably say that it is his own fault first as to his qualifying efforts this season. Nicholas Shaw, Checo is plus 1750 and Max is plus 1000. I have no idea how odds work. To be honest, I'm not a betting man. Do you think they have any chance to win? They've got a chance to win, but they need too many things to go right for them to win, which is why I don't think they will win Red Bull. What they need is for Verstappen to gain at least one position at the start, then be let through by Perez up to 4th, and then for there to be a fortunate safety car in terms of the timing for him then to go after the podium or the win. Again, that's just too many things have to go his way. And let's be honest, it is pretty hard to make up a position on the first lap here in Baku because the run into turn 1 is so short. And then after that, you've got turn 2 and turn 3, corners that are very tight with these very wide cars. And even though you've got that straight in between turn 2 and 3, again, going up to turn 3 on the brakes, it can be quite difficult, especially given how this track offline is a bit dirtier than other tracks. So, yeah, I just don't think it's possible, really, for Red Bull. Nicholas goes on to say, Checo's also tempting, but I can easily see a good race from Leclerc. Ferrari might screw that up, though. If Ferrari have better pace than McLaren in this race today, which I think they will, and, Red Bull and Mercedes behind if they're, getting held up in their own battles, and that's why they can't fight, for the podium necessarily or the win, that leaves, Leclerc to be out front and build a lead. As long as Leclerc, if he does have like a 0.2 of a second advantage over Piastri per lap, which I think is possible given, how quick the Ferrari car has been this weekend, then, if Leclerc can build a good lead until his pit stop, then that takes down the chances that Ferrari will screw it up. Because, if we get to the pit stop phase and Leclerc is 4 or 5 seconds clear of Piastri, which I think he will be, then, the pit stop they make doesn't necessarily have to be a 2.2 second one. So it all comes down for Ferrari. Obviously, don't lose the lead at the start, which I don't think Leclerc will, because, he started from pole here so many times and, maintained the lead. I think last year he lost the lead into turn 1. I can't remember, though, if that was in the sprint race or the race itself. I think it might have been in the race itself. But 2022, what was it? It was either 2022 or 2023 where Leclerc lost the lead into turn 1. I can't remember what one, but I'm pretty sure Leclerc has led the race into turn 1 at least a couple times. So, he's got the experience of doing that. And then, as long as he builds a good lead on that first lap, then he should be able to then pull away from Piastri, as long as Piastri is over a second behind and, hasn't got DRS, which obviously helps Oscar to hang on to the back of the Ferrari. If Leclerc could then, pull away at a couple tenths of a second a lap, then again, by the pit stop phase, Leclerc will be far enough clear that he won't have to worry that much about an undercut. And then all Ferrari at that point have got to do is cover off Piastri and whoever's in third, if it's Russell or Verstappen or Perez. So, again, as long as Leclerc does his job in the first stint, it should be a pretty simple race for Ferrari today. And for me, this is Ferrari's race to lose. They have to win today. If they want to give themselves a proper chance at winning the Constructors' Championship or even the Drivers' Championship, they have to win this race today. Because as it stands on the grid, Max is 6th, Leclerc's on pole. If it finishes that way, then Leclerc will be, 68 points, I think, off the lead of the championship. And given how quick Ferrari are at the moment, that gap could keep coming down race by race. And I certainly trust Leclerc more than Lando Norris to catch Max Verstappen in the championship if Ferrari consistently have a quicker car than Red Bull. So, yeah, they have to win today. Absolutely no doubt about it. They must win this race today. And then, in the Constructors' Championship, if they get both cars on the podium, even if it's second and third, that's 33 points, which will be more than whatever Red Bull get, and will keep them, very much close to the Constructors' Championship battle. So, yeah, big day for the championship this is, because obviously Max needs to finish ahead of Lando and needs to finish really in, I would say, the top 4 at minimum to, you know, to gain a good amount of points on Lando in the championship. And then for the Constructors' Championship, obviously Verstappen and Perez need to do the best they can to keep Red Bull in the lead, because obviously Red Bull are only 8 points clear of McLaren coming into this race. And then Ferrari, again, need to win and get the best result possible with both cars if they're going to properly announce themselves as championship contenders. So, championship-wise, today is a very big day. And again, with Max Verstappen, I think if he can finish in the top 4 and Lando finishes outside the top 6, then I think Verstappen 95% will win the world championship. But again, we don't know if that's going to happen. Max might have a DNF, might get knocked out at the start. You have no idea. And that could be exactly what Lando needs to, come back through the field, maybe grab a top 5 and put the gap down to 50, 52 points, something like that. And, keep gaining on Max. You just don't know. So, we will see. Let me see if I can find some other comments here. Nicholas asking, is this chat actually live? Yes, of course it is. Let me just scroll down a bit. Your boy's got him. Asks, top 3 performers of 2024 so far. Well, I did my mid-season review about 6 weeks ago. Well, I uploaded it a month ago, but I recorded it a couple of weeks before that. I recorded it in the summer break is the point I'm trying to make. And yeah, in that video, my top 3 performers were Verstappen number 1, Russell number 2, and Norris number 3. But of course, there's been a couple races since then, and I mean Verstappen still number 1, but Norris hasn't exactly improved. Given his performances lately, my opinion of him has not improved, let's say, since the summer break. George Russell, though, yeah, finished, what was it, 7th in Holland and I think 7th in Italy. But, I mean, the Italian Grand Prix, I think he was a bit unlucky, to be honest. Qualified 3rd, hit the back of Piastri at the start on the first corner, and then, his race after that was over. So it's hard to know with Russell where he would have ended up at Monza. I think he could have taken a podium if he had gone for a one-stop strategy and he had not, of course, had that contact on lap 1. So, yeah, unlucky, I would say, is or was Russell there. But one driver that really has gone up in my estimations in the last 2 races, without a doubt, is Charles Leclerc. And if Leclerc keeps this form up that he's in now until the end of the season, then I'll probably have Leclerc in my top 3 drivers of the year by, the end of season review in December. So, yeah, if there's to be any change to that top 3 at the moment, then I'd probably say Leclerc you'd throw in there, maybe in second. But, yeah. Still another, 8 races to go in the Formula 1 season. Obviously, this weekend we're racing. Next weekend, racing in Singapore. Can't wait for qualifying next week, because that is a real show of the driver's quality. That's qualifying session in Singapore. And then after that, we're racing in Texas, Mexico, Interlagos, Las Vegas, Qatar, and Yas Marina in Abu Dhabi. And reminder, quickly, that in terms of my content schedule, tomorrow I will be uploading onto the channel a review of the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, obviously another podcast episode. And then for next week's Singapore Grand Prix, I will be doing a qualifying watch-along, but I will not be doing a race watch-along. And the reason that is because the race in Singapore normally is boring, and the track layout they used last year, I'm pretty sure they're not using this year, because the only reason they altered the layout last year was because they were doing work to one of the grandstands, which is going to be, I think, improved for this year and beyond. So, yeah, there will not be a race watch-along next Sunday, but I will be doing a qualifying watch-along for the most important part of that weekend. Qualifying is the most important part of the Singapore Grand Prix weekend, so don't worry for that. I will be live as usual, and I think I'll be live next Saturday at 12:30 p.m. UK time, hour and a half as usual before qualifying for the build-up, and then qualifying starts at 2 p.m. UK time, and then obviously I'll go through the session and react to that with you guys. And then next Monday, the day after the Singapore Grand Prix, of course, I'll upload a review of the Singapore Grand Prix. So that's the content plan for the next 8 days. And if you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe for more content like this. And like I said, if you haven't already, smash that like button. It does help the channel grow. And yeah. The human Pokedexes, I don't know why they're taking the engine pens now. Should have taken them when he was in a worse group position, as, or AKA should have taken them at Zandthorpe. I think it means Zandvoort. By the way, cheers for that super chat I've just got. I'll read that out in just a second. Yeah, I was miffed that this morning that, you know, Hamilton is taking an engine penalty. The only thing that it could reasonably explain that is that there is a serious issue on the power unit that they had to go and put a new one in. But as you said, if they're just taking an engine penalty for the sake of it, then why didn't they do that 3 weeks ago in Zandvoort when Hamilton was like 13th on the grid? Doesn't make any sense. But let me just read out this super chat quick from Carluccio for £4.99. Says, morning, mate. What's your views on the Red Bull drop in form, questionable brakes, and how long's of been on there? I think you're asking how long have they been on there? I think is what you might be asking there. I don't think it's because I know not Red Bull, the FIA banned, what was it, asymmetrical brakes or braking. That is not why Red Bull have had a drop in form, because their form was dropping before that ban came into place. And I think I talked about this a couple of weeks ago, so I'll try to remember what I said. But so, start the season, Red Bull were dominant. And then when we got to May, the Miami Grand Prix, McLaren brought a big upgrade that worked massively. I think even more probably than McLaren were expecting it to. I'd say it gave McLaren probably a half a second per lap extra compared to what they were getting before. And then a couple weeks later at Imola, Red Bull started to bring upgrades, but those upgrades started to make the car worse in terms of the handling. And, we've heard Max Verstappen complain really since the beginning of the European season about the handling, too much understeer, even some oversteer here and there. The handling has not been to his exact liking really since, I would say, the Miami Grand Prix was probably the last time he was very comfortable with the Red Bull car. So yeah, coincidentally at the same time as McLaren improved, Red Bull, not intentionally of course, got worse. And because of that, that's what allowed things to get closer. And then McLaren at Zandvoort, which was what, 3 weeks ago, McLaren brought another big upgrade, which put them firmly at aero heavy tracks, like one we're going to next week in Singapore. It put them firmly ahead of Red Bull. And that's why McLaren, even though this weekend maybe they're not quicker than Red Bull, I'd say this is probably a one-off. And again, when we get to Singapore next week, I think McLaren will be definitely the quickest team. But for Red Bull, we've seen it with other teams. We've seen it with Ferrari at times this year. We've seen it with Aston Martin, where the teams brought upgrades, they haven't worked, and then they've had to adjust themselves to the new parts they brought. And Red Bull, the reason they've improved this weekend compared to what we saw 2 weeks ago in Italy is because, one, they brought a new floor here, a new floor body, which was a revised geometry for the floor tunnel, I believe it was called. They brought that and also adjusted the setup because they've been going through the data and they've appeared to have found whatever issues they were having with the setup of the car, which is why again they've improved compared to what we saw 2 or 3 weeks ago. So that is ultimately why Red Bull are in the position they're in now. It's not because Red Bull had something banned, which I know is the popular conspiracy theory, is, that's why we're having a competitive season, because the FIA secretly banned something on the Red Bull car. There is no evidence for that. It's all bullshit. All bullshit. It's simply McLaren have got a lot better, and Red Bull, I wouldn't say Red Bull have necessarily got a lot worse, but they, in terms of the handling of the car, it is worse than it was at the start of the year. But I think the car fundamentally, the Red Bull car, is still very quick. It's just about the setup. And if they can get the car handling like Max wants it to and start the weekend off strong like they did this weekend and not have to do major setup changes, then Red Bull will still be very quick and still will be, contenders for podiums and race wins. So Red Bull, they're going to win a race soon. I have no doubt about it. But when it will come, who knows? But yeah, cheers for that super chat. Laurie Rastogi saying, I think people rate Russell's season just because he's beating Hamilton, when Hamilton has had a mess season for his standards. Yeah, maybe a bit. You could say Hamilton's had a mare season, but we have to remember Lewis has won 2 races this year. So it's not like Lewis has been absolutely dreadful, completely dreadful. And yeah, I think we have to give Russell the credit he deserves. He has been the team leader, really, for this season. And is, at the minute, clearly better than Lewis Hamilton in terms of performance. Nicholas says, I think Max can make such a huge gain here with Lando starting 17th, or actually starts 15th, that he won't risk anything. We'll see. Laurie, sorry, saying that Russell has had some good races, but others he's left performance on the table or has made errors. I disagree with you. I think start of the season, yeah, he made that mistake in Melbourne, I remember, where he smashed into the wall. But I can't remember that many races this year where I've thought, yeah, Russell should have done better today. I mean, yeah, I just look at this season. I can't think of many races where you could legitimately say Russell could have done better. In the first, what was it, 8 races of the year, the reason Mercedes was slow was not because of the drivers. It was because the car was genuinely shit. And Russell, fair play to him, did the best he could with that shit car. And then since the car became good, I think 99% of the time he's done the best job he can. Canada, maybe you could argue he could have done better there to maybe get second or even win the race. You know, that's an argument you can have. Barcelona, probably in the race, yeah, could have done better. But, you know, Austria ended up winning. Silverstone, he was unlucky with, you know, the engine issue. Hungary, yeah, he had a poor qualifying, didn't he? So, yeah, that weekend, I'll give you. Spa, maybe in qualifying, you could say could have done better, but in the race, I thought he performed very well. I know he got disqualified, but again, that disqualification I don't think takes away completely what he did. And then the last 2 race weekends, I mean, Zandvoort, he did the best he could. The car was just not quick enough. And at Monza, again, was unlucky in hitting the back of Piastri. And then I thought actually did well to come back and finish in 7th. And he wasn't that far behind Max Verstappen even in finishing 7th place. So out of we've had like what, 15 races so far. Maybe 3 race weekends you could say he could have done better. But again, one of them I'd say you could debate either way. That's not bad. I don't think you can sit there and say, well, some of the races this year he could have done better. I don't think 3 race weekends in 15, I don't think we can equate that to, you know, some. So, yeah, Russell, he's done absolutely fine for me. Clearly better than Lewis Hamilton, and clearly, for me, top 5 driver this season. And like I said, I had him in the top 2. Rebel says, be real, Loris. 8 scoring points today. He will score points today because the car's quick enough. I mean, if all the cars were equal, of course, I don't think he would, but he'll score points, no doubt about it. The car's too quick. Yanni says Hamilton is washed up and Lando can drive fast, but can't race. Oscar is the true #1 driver at McLaren. Well, it's funny, innit, with McLaren, because if Piastri wins today and Lando finishes in 7th, which is again likely to be where Lando finishes, then Piastri will go on to 222 points at least, may even be 223 if Piastri does the fastest lap. And then Norris, if he finished in 7th, he'd go up to 248 points. So Piastri would only be a race wins amount of points away from his teammate. So, yeah, we will see whether Oscar, you know, is able to indeed get that close today. And maybe even with how the form is going at the moment, who's to say that Oscar Piastri doesn't finish ahead of Lando Norris in the championship this season? Because for as quick as Lando is on a Saturday, Of course, points are scored on Sunday, and if you look since the Hungarian Grand Prix, Oscar has been the better driver. He's beaten Lando in 3 of the last 4 races. So, yeah, he's been the better driver as Oscar. I think Oscar has scored, what, 73 points in the last 4 races, and Lando has scored, how many points? I think 58 points. So it's only like a 15-point margin in Piastri's favour, but still, in the last 4 races, Piastri, since he got his first win, he's been better in the races where it matters. So, yeah, who's to say he can't do it? I would be very happy for him if he does end up beating Lando. Not because I hate Lando, but I do really like Piastri, and I really want him to get the credit he deserves, because I still feel as though people don't quite give him the credit he deserves, because he is, I think, a lot better of a driver than people give him credit for. And yeah, Piastri, given how quick that McLaren car is, Piastri, currently 4th in the championship, only 20 points behind Leclerc. Definitely could get up to 3rd. And again, there is, I think, a decent chance he could get up to 2nd in the championship. And what a year that would be if he got up to 2nd. But it's going to be hard, given still how quick his teammate can be. And Leclerc ahead of him in super form. Jaden asking, will Perez let Max pass? Do we forgetting what happened in Interlagos? I mean, if Perez is not that much slower than Max and ahead of Max, then yeah, maybe Perez will not quite play fair. But if Max is clearly quicker than Perez, then Max will overtake. 100%. And we have to remember, I mean, since that Interlagos incident, I mean, that was a year and a half ago. I think the drivers have gotten over that. It wasn't that big of a deal, to be honest. Right, let me see if I can find any other comments here. Francisco says, hey, Chaz, Ferrari had a terrible race in WEC, hoping for a better one in F1. Yeah, well, in F1, they're doing pretty well at the moment. Been brilliant. You have to say probably the best team on the grid since the return from the summer break. Bluetoothed Sharks is my predictions for the start. Russell comes flying into turn 1, takes off for an out. Lewis takes P1 from the pit lane start. Francisco says Ferrari can win the constructors considering they have a better driver pairing than both Red Bull and McLaren. I'm not sure I'd say a better driver pairing than McLaren. I mean, it's close. It's a close debate, but I'd probably say McLaren have a better partnership than Ferrari, but yeah, only just. It's just a question if that advantage can overcome the car disadvantage. Well, at the minute, Ferrari are what do you call it? Ferrari are maybe on the pace with McLaren. So who's to say there is a car disadvantage at the moment? Seragara says top 5 will be Piastri, Leclerc, Perez, Sainz, Verstappen. Bottle Job FC says, good morning, Chaz. Hopefully this race isn't a bore fest like the last couple of years, especially with Lewis and Lando starting at the back. Yeah, I really hope it's not as bad, at least, as last year. And, I mean, the year before was pretty bad as well. But 2022, I think, would have been a good race if the two Ferraris had not retired. That's what we needed. We needed the two Ferraris to be in the race because we were going to have a really close finish. But then we all saw what happened. But yeah, last year's race was fucking dreadful. And I've made it known this track is what do you call it? This track is not one of my favorites, I have to say. Yanni saying Oscar has been sacrificed for Lando this year by McLaren. The thing is, though, with that is, I mean, that's all well and great them doing that now. I mean, if they were going to do that, they should have done that. Yeah, they should have done that probably before the summer break, to be honest. But you know, let's say Piastri wins today and Lando finishes 7th, and then Piastri wins next week in Singapore. Piastri's only going to be like 20 points behind Lando. So at that point, can you really tell Oscar to not race Lando when Oscar is consistently outperforming Lando? So, yeah, today and next week in Singapore, I think might really decide whether those team orders do continue at McLaren. Because like I said, if Piastri wins today and Norris finishes 7th or lower, and then Piastri beats Norris fairly next week in Singapore, then I don't see at that point how you can fairly call team orders and tell Piastri that he has to help Lando when Piastri is consistently outperforming Lando. So, yeah, we'll see when it comes to that. By the way, before I move on to talking about the teams quick, before I bring Nib on, I just wanted to ask you guys, does my microphone sound okay? Because I've heard from someone that my mic might be peaking a little bit. Obviously, I can't hear my microphone because I'm streaming. But yeah, does my mic sound fine? Does it sound like it sounded yesterday? Like it sounds, does it sound like it does normally? It should do. I haven't changed anything on my settings. The settings are all the same. Everything is exactly the same as it was yesterday. So, yeah. Yeah, let me know in the chat if there's any, issues, or if it sounds sounds like it should, sounds like it normally does. Buildup FC says if it wasn't for Oscar's slow start to the season when he had some bad luck as well, then he'd be ahead of Lando right now. Since Monaco, I think Piastri has scored the most points in the championship. Yeah, I saw a stat. I can't remember from when it was, but I think it might have been since maybe the Spanish Grand Prix that, yeah, Piastri, I think maybe since then, has scored the most amount of points. So, yeah, Piastri's been in great form, and it looks like he's going to keep it up. Sounds okay. Doesn't sound any different. Superco says, thought you had a cold. I don't have a cold. It's just because it's early, a bit earlier in the day. Streaming than I'm used to, so that's why probably my voice sounds a bit deeper. Sounds fine. Yeah, mic sounds good. Right, that's all good. Let me see if I can find one more comment before we move on to the teams quick, because I just want to get into the teams and quickly discuss race strategy, because obviously for a couple teams it's going to be quite important today. Saying those races, though they were average or maybe above average at most, they weren't Suzuka or Australia bad, but still not exactly great. Laurie says, can Williams finish 7th and 8th today? I don't think so. I think Hamilton and Norris, even though they're coming from the back, I think they, I think, they, They're still going to be way too quick. I mean, the McLaren and the Mercedes should be a second per lap quicker than the Williams in clean air. So, yeah, should be fine for them to pass the Williamses. But let me just hide this timer quickly and just whiz through the teams and get into how I think their races will play out and the keys on strategy for today. So for Red Bull, you got Perez in 4th and Verstappen in 6th. Red Bull, I don't think will start on the hard compound tyre like they did 2 weeks ago at Monza, but I do think they're going to play the long game. And what I mean by that is I do think both drivers are going to go longer with their first stint on the medium compound tyre than, say, the top 3, Leclerc, Piastri and Sainz will go, to give themselves fresher hard tyres for the second half of the race. That is really from 4th and 6th on the grid, Perez 4th, of course, Verstappen in 6th. That is really the only thing strategically they can do, I think, to end up on the podium or winning the race. Yeah, you could say, start on the hard tyre, but I think for the start of the race, given how close things get, it's a bit of a risk starting on that compound because you don't want to have 2 cold tyres at the start and you don't want to have, that, falling back through the field because your tyres aren't quite fired up. Because it can really cost you here in Baku, especially if you end up colliding with someone, which is very likely on the first lap here in Baku. So that's what I would do if I was Red Bull. Start on the medium with both cars and then just go, I don't know, 3, 4, maybe 5 laps longer than say, Ferrari go in this Grand Prix. I think that's probably something worth doing. For Ferrari, in terms of the race, the man starting on pole, Leclerc, as I said earlier, what he needs to do is obviously maintain the lead and build probably a 4 to 5 second lead by the time we get to the pit stop phase. If we can do that, then he can easily cover off the cars behind. Ferrari then can easily cover off the cars behind by pitting a lap later. And then they should be fine, I think, to go on and probably win this race. Let's hope they don't overcomplicate things. Obviously something they've done in the past, but strategically, Ferrari have been better as of late. Mercedes, with George Russell, I think he will probably do what I said Red Bull will probably try. Start the medium and probably go a bit longer than the top 3 on the medium compound tyre. For Lewis Hamilton, though, clearly, after what was a very good hard tyre run on Friday, I think they should start on the hard compound tyre. There's nothing to lose, him start from the pit lane. So, yeah, start on the hard, go as long into the race as possible. Obviously, hope for a safety car. If you don't get a safety car, then for the final 5 laps or 10 laps or whatever, you can bolt on a set of medium or even soft compound tyres. That's what I think they should do. Again, did a very good hard tyre stint on Friday, so clearly the data and the knowledge is there. For McLaren, for Oscar Piastri, it's pretty simple. He just needs to hang on to the back of Leclerc and not let Leclerc get any further than, say, 2.5 seconds away from him to keep himself in the undercut range. And if he keeps himself, say, within a couple seconds of Leclerc, then McLaren can go for the undercut. And I'm hoping, because strategically lately, McLaren have not acted like a top team. They've been not ambitious enough. And I'm hoping today they will be ambitious enough, because ambition on strategy might be the difference between finishing first and second. So, again, if Piastri can keep himself a couple seconds behind Leclerc, no more than a couple seconds, then McLaren hopefully will go for the undercut and not decide to go for an overcut, which I think would be, quite frankly, I think that would be them chickening out, pussyfooting out of going for, the race lead. So I hope they go for it today with Piastri. And for Lando Norris, I think as well for him, given how well the hard compound tyre is performing in these hot conditions, and the race today going to be quite hot as the sun is beating down on the streets of Baku. The hard tyre today is going to be very good. So I think for Lando, same with Hamilton, start him on the hard compound tyre and then run him as long into the race as he can. The pace should be good on that compound. And yeah, he should be able to get at least 30 laps into the race on that compound, given how good McLaren look after those tyres. For Aston Martin, Fernando Alonso starting in 7th. He just needs to hold off the two Williamses. If he can do that, then that's a good enough race for him. Let's see if Lance Stroll can do anything from, 13th on the grid. Poor qualifying for him. Surely there's a bit more in there from him for the race. Racing Bulls have got Tsunoda in 11th. Their straight line speed looks very good, so watch out for Tsunoda down the straights. He might be able to make a couple moves today. So yeah, that's really the only hope for them, is that straight line speed can maybe carry them to a point. Alpine have both cars from the start from the pit lane. Their race pace actually looks good, but they're starting from the pit lane. So, and actually I've just seen Zhou Guanyu is now starting. I think, is he starting from the pit lane as well? It says he's starting 19th for a power unit penalty. So another penalty we've got. But yeah, both Alpines start from the pit lane. There's no way. I don't think they can get a point from there. Williams, both cars in the top 10, 8th and 9th. If they can get at least one car in the top 10, that would be good enough. But really, given how strong they've been, if Aston Martin are a bit on the back foot today, there's no reason why they can't finish 9th and 10th with both cars. And that would be a key result in them trying to catch and pass Alpine in the championship. Sauber, load of shit. And Haas, they have got Oliver Behrman starting in the top 10 for them. Behrman in P10. Nico Hulkenberg, I think, is P12. So a decent position for them. I just don't think they've got the pace that Williams and Aston Martin have, though, to be able to finish in the points. But they will be contenders, no doubt about that. And we know that they will probably be quite aggressive with when they first make their pit stop. But here is a reminder of my race prediction. I think Leclerc will win, from Piastri 2nd, Russell 3rd, Verstappen 4th, Sainz 5th, Perez 6th. This prediction was made before the announcement that Hamilton would start from the pit lane, so I think instead it will be Norris in 7th, Hamilton 8th, Alonso 9th, and Alex Albon in P10. So there you go. That's my race prediction. Let me just get the timer back on screen. And there you go. 32 minutes to go until the race is underway. Keep smashing that like button, by the way, guys. As in a minute, I, of course, will bring Nib on. Before I do, though, just going to quickly post a link of the stream out one final time. And then I will... and then I'll bring him on. So just give me a sec. Come join us here to watch along the Azerbaijan GP with both Ferrari and McLaren on the front row. And there you go. So hopefully we'll get even more people coming very soon. But yeah, let me just get these couple things ready, and then I'll bring Nib on. We'll get his thoughts ahead of the race. Of course, plenty of things to talk about from qualifying coming into this race, which I'm sure he'll want to talk about. Obviously at McLaren, team orders and all of that stuff. So let me just get my Discord up and get him on. Right. All right, are you there?
Hello, hello.
Yeah, there you go. How are you?
I am doing better now. What about yourself?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Looking forward to the race. How are you looking forward to the race a lot more now than maybe you were going into qualifying? Because I mean, McLaren weren't looking super great after practice, but Piastri obviously once again on the front row. It should be at the start very fun to see. Obviously, who ends up where, but it hopefully will be as competitive a race as what we got a couple weeks ago. But yeah, with Piastri, how much are you fancying his chances today?
Well, I was a little bit I wasn't as keen on his chances at Monza, was I? And then he did that madness
Yeah,
at the second chicane, but I still I've got a bit of hopium that he could perhaps get Leclerc into turn 3. But yeah, I mean it's pretty tough because of how big these cars are to get a move done down there without there being some contact or perhaps going into the wall. And Oscar is smart enough to avoid that sort of contact. So we'll see. But yeah, I mean, going into qualifying, was just like, yeah, the races are now earlier than normal. That's great. Um, but yeah, I think after qualifying and how sort of mixed up the grid is a little bit, especially as we're looking through into Q1 and Q2. I think with obviously the Red Bull starting a little bit further back than perhaps where they've been performing all weekend,
yeah,
I think it's going to provide a pretty exciting race. Perhaps even though Oscar spoke about it immediately after um, in the quali interview afterwards that it's very hard to follow around here, and it was already hard to follow on Friday. So that doesn't fill me with great confidence that it is actually going to be a great race. But I think that the mixed up grid will provide some form of entertainment. Of course, you've got Hamilton and Norris coming back through the grid as well, so certainly we'll have some form of entertainment. I hope.
yeah. I think it'll be competitive, but I'm not sure we'll get like a lot of overtaking. I think we'll get a couple moves through the race, but as long as it's better, a bit better than last year's race, which I mean was just absolutely dreadful. And I mean the last couple here have been pretty bad. But as I've said before, we're gonna need like F2 level of chaos for there to be an actually properly exciting race here. As we're just seeing Leclerc getting lined up on the grid. Um, so yeah, we're starting. I want to start with McLaren because obviously the big news coming into this weekend is that McLaren have issued team orders, and that is for Piastri to help Lando when he can, but not to, from what I understand, not to impede himself too much in helping Lando, which is still a bit vague. Um, yeah, what are your thoughts? Do you think they should have maybe done this earlier, looking from the team's perspective, or do you think it's too late?
Purely looking from the team's perspective, if they wanted to go properly for both championships, then they should have done it earlier. Yes. Um, I mean, of course, we had Will Buxton absolutely about to lose his mind after Monza
Yeah.
last weekend, which was hilarious to see. Um, but but yeah, it's been weird, right? And as you said, it's still a little bit vague. It's not hard. You've still got Norris saying, "I wouldn't want Oscar to give up a win to swap orders." But I mean, what from my understanding of what they've said, that if they're in the same position as what they were last weekend, come the final lap, that then they would swap positions. That's at least what I've sort of grasped from it. So sort of semi quasi team orders. Like it's just a bit weird. It's a bit flimsy, and there's been talk about it's not really hard line because of the way that Oscar's contract is perhaps written
Yeah.
and some clauses that he's got in there. So of course a good old Mark Allen Weber masterclass there. Um but yeah, it's just a bit weird, isn't it?
It is. I mean, it feels like that doing it because they have to, not because they actually want to do it. But as I said, a couple of minutes ago. If Piastri wins today and then wins next week, then
Yeah.
surely those team orders are thrown out the window. Because how can you at that point tell Piastri to ever give up position to Lando if he's beating him that regularly? And then at that point, you could maybe say Oscar's more likely to fight Max than Lando is.
That a little bit too far, the last comment. But yeah, I mean, as I think we spoke about this after Monza, that Oscar's closer to Lando is than Lando is to Max in the championship. Um, it's not like Oscar has completely stunk it up. It's not like he's doing a Perez or a Bottas here,
Yeah,
and I don't think it's very comparable to other seasons where we've had team orders where Bottas and Hamilton, because the championship was a lot closer. Those
yeah,
couple of points could have mattered. Sochi. I remember when we were doing the race watch along for the Russian Grand Prix, we were like, yeah, just in case they've got to do it.
yeah,
And it would have been like maybe 20, 30 points at that stage.
yeah.
Um,
It was 30. Yeah,
not
it must have been 30 at most.
yeah, it's like if there's a DNF, then yeah, like bang, pressure's right on again. Whereas, if Max were to score no points, it'd still be at like 35, 40 points or whatnot. So yeah, it's just a very different situation. And yeah, I mean, I think McLaren have had to say it so that the Lando crybabies could stop maybe harassing them.
Yeah, well, after Monza online, it was quite a lot. Norris fans being like, well, where are team orders? Where are this? Where are that? As I told you a couple of days ago, it would be ironic today if we see, Perez letting through Max. Maybe not for the win, as I said then, but, if Perez is in third and Max is in fourth, if Perez ends up letting Max through to take third, it would be very ironic if Lando fans then start crying about team orders, given that, that's what they wanted for the last few weeks. But team orders are not going to matter today unless Lando gets, fortunate with a safety car, because Norris, his aim is to finish in seventh place. Piastri obviously going for the race win. And yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. I did find it funny though. I think I don't know if you saw this. Max actually repeated basically what you said, that Lando is closer to Oscar than the Lando is to himself, which I thought was a nice comment that he made. I think on the Thursday here in Baku. But yeah, for looking outside of McLaren, if we look at Red Bull, fourth and sixth on the grid, obviously not good qualifying. Saved, I think, by the fact that Lando Norris is back where he is. If he was up on pole or on the front row, I think Red Bull would be very distraught if they ended up where they did. But still some chances for them today to score good points. With Verstappen though, surely you'd imagine he will gain on the position he's in on the grid, sixth on the grid. But realistically, how many positions do you see him gaining?
I think Max can maybe get up to third. It was weird watching Red Bull just absolutely fall away come Q3, wasn't it? I mean,
Yeah,
we've seen it a few times in the past here though, that a certain team, once the temperature drops when it gets late in the afternoon here in Baku, that their performance just completely falls away. I can't remember if it was Mercedes or Ferrari. I think it was Ferrari, maybe
yeah,
2017, 2018.
yeah,
I think they completely fell away, sort of similar to what Red Bull have here. So, I mean, mentioned earlier, and as you can see if you're watching the coverage right now, it's bright sunny skies, so you won't have to worry about the tire temps at this stage in terms of them being too cold. That's for sure. So, I certainly expect Red Bull to make a bit of a charge during the race. I'm not too sure about Perez. I mean, Perez had a great weekend, really, up until Q3. Um, and yeah, I think probably at most Max can maybe get third, but gonna be pretty tough.
Yeah, it will be tough because I mean, like we were saying, I don't think there's going to be a ton of overtaking. But for Max, the aim has to be obviously one, beat Lando. But if he can finish third, and Lando does finish outside the top six, then the gap goes up to it'll probably go up to at least 71 points. And at that point, with 7 races to go, you'd have to say Max is probably 95% there in terms of winning the championship. So today is a very important day in the Drivers' Championship. Max, still has to give it everything he has. He can't afford to be too relaxed out there because, Lando is going to be pushing through the field. And as we've seen here before, if a safety car comes out, lap 20, lap 25, that could bring Lando right into play. So we'll have to see how it all plays out. But in terms of the pole position team and driver, Leclerc, obviously for Ferrari, yet again, 4th year in a row on pole. For me, I think they win today because I mean, at the minute their form in the races is really good, but surely they are going to finally win in Baku, something that amazingly they've never done, even though they've always been very strong here. It's been one of their strongest tracks for the last few years, even though they've never won a race here. Um, how likely would you say it is for Leclerc to win today?
Oh, I don't want to jinx Leclerc because I mean he has been outstanding around here for quite some time. I mean another great lap yesterday. Um, I'll say a 75% chance of winning the race. I feel like that's pretty good, right?
Yeah.
Maybe even bumped up to 80. I mean, yeah, I mean Leclerc's driving it at his absolute best level at the moment. That's for sure. Um, and yeah, it'd be wild. Back-to-back race wins for Ferrari. Certainly possible here, and I'm not too sure if Sainz will be able to get past um, up past Piastri, but that remains to be seen. I mean, I heard before. I think it was Serugara saying that Ferrari got the best driver lineup. I mean, I think you could have argued that at the start of the season, but certainly not recently. I mean, Sainz was absolutely nowhere last weekend,
Yeah.
even though he had the fresher tyres than Leclerc. Um, yeah, I mean, Sainz has just been a bit weird this year, hasn't he?
Well,
So,
he's
but once again, full credit to Leclerc for his great lap yesterday.
yeah. With Sainz, this is what you get with him. You get a few race weekends where he's really good, like we saw earlier this year or like late last year, with obviously that Singapore weekend and Monza last year as well. But then he has a load of races where he's just like a average, 5, 6 out of 10 performance. He's not consistent, and that's why with Carlos, that's why he's not an elite level driver. By the way, there's feedback coming through on your end. I don't know if you can hear that. I think it's just slight feedback. What was I going to say? Yeah, that's the reason Carlos Sainz is not an elite driver, because he's not consistent. Some days, yeah, he's right up there and he's brilliant, but other days he performs like a Perez or a Bottas. He's just nowhere near it. And as you said, at Monza, had fresher tyres than Leclerc by like 3 or 4 laps, yet he was losing like 2 or 3 tenths a lap, which is even Ferrari, I'm sure, were baffled at that. And if Sainz was actually as quick as he should have been on those fresh tyres, he probably could have finished on the podium on that one-stop strategy. But yeah, Sainz was poor at Monza, and yeah, Carlos in a good position, but yeah, lately it's just not been that great. But yeah, Leclerc, as you said, it's we have to be careful not to jinx him, but he has been very, very good this weekend, and of course, as of late. One more thing with Leclerc: if he wins today and Max is not on the podium, is there any talk of a championship challenge from him, or do you think Ferrari should more focus on the constructors?
Well, it'd be closer. Hmm. I don't know. I don't know. That's my answer. And yeah, sorry about the feedback coming through before. I was playing with my mic stand and it was
All right.
still my mic was still coming through. So sorry about that. But the Ferrari and the constructors, I'm not too sure. I mean, I feel like pretty consistently they're going to be outscored by McLaren. Of course, they should outscore McLaren today. But I think Leclerc's driving so well anyway. You could just keep going full steam ahead with Leclerc, really.
Yeah, Leclerc. It's such a shame he's not in that McLaren, or Ferrari don't have the pace of the McLaren, because if he was in that type of car, we would definitely have a championship battle going to the wire. But yeah, Lando, as we've seen this season, inconsistent and has let Max massively off the hook, I think, this year. And that's why most likely still Max Verstappen will win the championship. One more thing to go on to before we get into predictions is, of course, Franco Colapinto, a driver me and you've liked from F2.
Aha.
Obviously, someone you've liked a lot from F2. 8th on the grid in his second F1 race. What a performance. Yeah, what have you thought of him?
You just set me up. You teed me up perfectly here to rant about some F1 Twitter
Yeah.
bellends. I think is the best way to describe them. You know, crying, "Oh, James Vowles so unfairly treating of Logan Sargent. Oh, why would they put this inexperienced F2 driver in an F1 car? Oh, this poor little baby." Yeah. What? God, give me a break. What a performance by Colapinto. I mean, he's already looking pretty good in Monza last weekend, but I mean, we've seen that with some other Williams drivers that have stepped in, of course. So I didn't want to get ahead of myself too much with last weekend, but yeah, what a great performance um yesterday. Um, but I mean, as probably the people that follow F2 in this chat, it's pretty hard to get a good grasp on F2 nowadays to see who actually is a good talent. But I can't remember what race it was, but it was 3 months ago. I'm like, oh, this guy's got serious talent, and perhaps another year in F2, and I think he's an F1 level talent. And I mean, forget another year in F2. I mean, he will have to do another year in F2 because there's not going to be a seat for him next season. But
Hmm.
um, yeah, wow, what a great performance! And I mean, you expect him to put in some more good performances for the rest of the season, and once again in F2 next season.
Absolutely. And if he keeps this up to the end of the season, then no doubt he will have a good chance of getting a seat probably for 2026, because if he's competing right there with Albon, if not beating Albon, people are going to look at that and be very, midfield team principles. They're going to be very excited by that. And, certain teams, if they have a very underperforming driver next year, they might look at him as a possible replacement for whoever they got. I mean, Alpine, obviously next year got, what is it, Gasly and Doohan. If, Gasly ends up leaving, that might happen. Or Doohan, hopefully he does perform, because I really like the guy. But if he ends up not performing, then, that could be an opportunity for the guy. Um, maybe if, Sonoda does leave to go to Aston Martin, which is a rumor that's still out there, maybe, the Red Bull would throw him in the Racing Bulls car alongside Lawson. Obviously, depending on, if Sergio Perez gets kicked out of the Red Bull. So, yeah, if he keeps these performances up, he puts himself right in the window for a 2026 seat. And of course, we have to remember Andretti still campaigning for a seat, or not a seat, but a place on the grid. If they do get on the grid, then there's a driver right there, Colapinto, who they can take. and, put in their car. So yeah, we'll see how that all plays out. But I just hope he keeps these performances up so that, we've got another driver there that, could possibly be on the grid. And we'll see today whether he can get his first Formula One points finish. Definitely, it would be more impressive getting your first points finish here in Baku than Monza, because Baku is a pretty tough track. But yeah, just under 10 minutes to go now until lights out, as Leclerc just getting in his car. So, what are your predictions then for the race?
I was dreading this. All right, I'm gonna go with a bit of a nuffy take. Since I was deeply ashamed of my lack of prediction, even though it would have been wrong for Oscar to win the race last time out in Monza. So I'm gonna say Oscar Piastri wins the race today, even though I've just given Leclerc a 75% chance of winning the Grand Prix. I have to do it. So Piastri to win the race from Leclerc, then in second. Third, I'll go Sainz in third. Then I would say Max in fourth and Perez in fifth.
Yeah, that if Sainz is not too slow today, then that seems pretty likely. I mean, even with Piastri, you know, obviously Leclerc's going to be very good today. But if Piastri can hang on, remember we got DRS activated after only one lap. If Oscar can hang on in that first lap, there's no reason why Oscar can't, be right there with Leclerc throughout the race. So that first lap is really, really important for Oscar and McLaren. Yeah, my top five was, what was it? Leclerc, Piastri, Russell, Verstappen, and then Sainz, I think, fifth. So yeah, we'll see whose prediction is more so correct, as we've got just under 8 minutes left. And I'll just read a couple final comments before we get into things. As well, make sure if you haven't already to vote in that poll at the top of the live chat. We've got just under 300 people have voted. So let's try and get over 300 votes if we can. And then I'll finish up the poll. We'll see the results. Bottle Job FC says F2 is losing its credibility. Especially looking at Behrman. At this rate, he's going to finish higher in the F1 standings than in the F2 standings. Yeah, that's true. F2, he's been non-existent, but that's not really been because of him. And yeah, F1, every time he's done an F1 session, he's impressed. And obviously, starting P10 is Behrman today, and definitely a contender for a point. And Behrman is 15th, I think, or 16th in the Drivers' Championship in F1. So we'll see if he is able to climb up from that. The Woden says Ricard Slow should open his visor on the straights and use his hooter as an aero device. Should gain him a couple tenths on the straight. I will admit, I am a bit surprised Ricciardo got knocked out in Q1 in terms of like how I thought he would perform coming into the weekend. I thought it'd be a bit better, but I think Ricciardo, again, I know some of you in the chat like to slander him, but I think he's performing absolutely fine. It's not like he's regularly race in, race out performing poorly. If it wasn't for the penalties he got last Grand Prix, he probably would have ended up in the points. So his performance is fine, in my view. Anyway, yeah, now got just over 300 votes, 301 votes, and I asked you guys, who do you think will win the 2024 Azerbaijan Grand Prix? And 52% of you went for the man on pole, Charles Leclerc. 24% went for Oscar Piastri, 15% for Max Verstappen, and 6% went for George Russell. We'll see who's correct in the end, as we have got about 5 minutes to go until the race begins. and let me get into just a final couple things before lights out. Firstly, the championship standings. Max Verstappen 62 points clear of Lando Norris. He needs a decent gain today, Max, if he's going to really take a very strong hold of that Drivers' Championship. Norris in second, Leclerc in third. Leclerc, remember, only 24 points behind Norris in third. Piastri only 20 points behind Leclerc in fourth. Sainz only 13 points behind Piastri in fifth. And then Hamilton 6th, Perez 7th, Russell 8th, Alonso 9th, Lance Stroll 10th. And remember as well, Red Bull only 8 points clear of McLaren coming into this race. Ferrari in third, and Ferrari are only 39 points behind Red Bull in the lead. Mercedes in fourth, Aston Martin 5th, Racing Bulls 6th, Haas in 7th, Alpine 8th, Williams in 9th, and Sauber still pointless in 10th. Let's go on to some stats regarding some of the teams. For Red Bull, it's supposed to say there that they have won the last 3 races in Baku. They've been very strong here on a Sunday as of late, and have won in Baku 4 times since 2016. But Red Bull have only taken 1 podium in the last 4 races. For Ferrari, they have never won, amazingly, the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. They have taken, though, 4 podiums in Baku since 2016 and have finished on the podium in all of the last 3 races, of course, winning 2 weeks ago in Italy. Mercedes, their last win in Baku 5.5 years ago with Valtteri Bottas. Mercedes have also won 3 times in Baku since 2016. Mercedes, though, have not been on the podium since the summer break. And for McLaren, they have never won the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, nor finished on the podium here in Baku. And even though they've had a very quick car, McLaren have only won 2 of the last 7 races. We'll see if they can win here today. But here is your starting grid for this Azerbaijan Grand Prix. On the front row, it is Charles Leclerc and Oscar Piastri, the front 2 from the Italian Grand Prix race result. On the second row, Carlos Sainz and Sergio Perez. On the third row, George Russell and Max Verstappen. Remember last year, those two made contact at turn 2. On the fourth row, Fernando Alonso and Franco Colapinto, his record high start, 8th place. And completing the top 10, Alexander Albon and Oliver Behrman, of course, racing for Haas, not in the red of the Scuderia. Just outside the top 10, Yuki Tsunoda and Nico Hülkenberg. 13th and 14th, Lance Stroll and Daniel Ricciardo, who both were on the podium in Ricciardo's win here in 2017. 15th and 16th is Lando Norris and Valtteri Bottas. And then 17th and 18th, Zhou Guanyu. Lewis Hamilton in 18th will be starting from the pit lane. And then so will the 2 Alpines of Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly. So there you go. As still a slight bit of feedback coming through on your end. I don't know if it's because you're moving things. But yeah, well, it's stopped now. There you go. So yeah, we are about to get underway. And as you can see there on the left-hand side of your screen, that is the running order or the starting order. 51 lap Grand Prix it'll be. And I've put M for the medium tyre for everyone. That's because I think most people will start on the medium, but I think we will get probably some hard tyre runners at the start. Definitely, you'd imagine the people starting in the pit lane will try that. But yeah, we'll find out in a moment who's starting on what compound as the formation lap will be underway in just a few moments' time. Rook saying that Albon, Ricciardo, Norris, Zhou, Gasly, and Ocon on hards, and everyone else is on the medium. So let me just correct that. So Albon and Norris, Ricciardo, as the formation lap's about to start. Zhou as well. And the formation lap begins right now as Leclerc and Piastri fly off. Yeah, Zhou on the hard, and then Ocon and Gasly. I might have to swap around Hamilton, Ocon, and Gasly depending on who's starting in what order in the pit lane. But yeah, the bottom three starting from the pit lane. But will be interesting to see Alex Albon. And yeah, Hamilton is in 19th, so let me just swap that around. It'll be interesting to see Albon. He's the highest starting person on the hard, and obviously up in P9, quite a high position.
He's just going to hold everyone up for Colapinto. What a team player. By the way, I noticed I'd accidentally knocked the gain on my microphone, so that probably was why I was coming through with feedback a little bit more. So
yeah,
I've fixed that. Should be good now.
Yeah, sounds good now. As Leclerc, I think, just coming into the middle sector on this formation lap. Beautiful day in Baku. And we're looking now at, I think, Oliver Behrman, who had an amazing F2 weekend here last year. Took pole position with a bent steering wheel, and then he won both the sprint and the feature race. So clearly a strong circuit for him. As now we're looking at Lewis Hamilton getting his gloves on, and obviously starting from the pit lane. No formation lap for them. As we're looking at the top five, we're just coming to the end of the middle sector. Leclerc already at the end of the middle sector. And it is quite remarkable how Leclerc has had pole here 4 years in a row and somehow not won. And I really hope he gets it today, because he let's be honest, he is, in terms of pure pace, out of any of the drivers, he is the king of the streets of Baku. And one day it will happen. He will get that win. And let's see if it is today, as Verstappen just warming his tyres up as they're coming through the kinks before the final part of the pit straight. As Leclerc just doing some burnouts. And strategy-wise, this should be probably a bit more simple than what we saw 2 weeks ago at Monza. We've got the same compounds as what we had at Monza, the C5, C4, and the C3. But it should be a one-stop strategy, because still pretty hard to make your way through the field, having pitted an extra time. But I wouldn't be surprised if we get drivers in a bit earlier than expected, if tyre wear is a bit extra, as the front 6 cars almost lined up on the grid. And Leclerc lines up on pole. It is pretty hard to lose the lead into turn 1, given just how short of a run it is. But it has happened, obviously. Famously, 2021 with Perez and Hamilton. Leclerc actually did lose the lead here, I think, a couple years ago to Perez as well. So it can happen, but really, the man on pole should lead into turn 1, as all the cars on the grid are now lined up. And here we go for this critical race in the World Championship. 3 lights, 4, 5 lights in Baku. And it's away we go. And Leclerc gets a very good start. Piastri gets a good one as well. In second, Perez locks up on the inside and is side by side with Russell. So is Verstappen with Russell as Perez up the inside of Sainz at turn 2. Max does the same to Russell, and both Red Bulls make up a position. Brilliant from the 2 Red Bulls. Perez in 3rd, Verstappen in 5th, as they now build up to turn 3. And Williams there, side by side with Behrman. Lance Stroll looks like he's had a decent start. So does Lando Norris, who looks like he may have gained a couple positions. But the front two already pulling away from Perez and so behind, as Max already climbing all over the back of the Ferrari of Carlos Sainz. But it is Leclerc, Piastri, Perez, Sainz, Verstappen, Russell, Alonso, and then Colapinto, Albon, Behrman, Stroll, and then I think Tsunoda as, Verstappen really close to Sainz. Needs to try and keep this close if he wants to have a go down the pit straight soon enough, as they begin to space out a bit towards the end of this middle sector of the first lap, as they now enter turn 15. Leclerc and Piastri have already exited it, as they now build up speed to go absolutely flat out at the highest speed part of the track. And after this first lap has been completed, DRS will be enabled, as Lance Stroll has got a puncture. So he'll be in the pits in a moment. Hopefully it doesn't deflate suddenly. And he's coming into the pits in the background, as loads of cars in the background side by side. Lando Norris and 3 other cars. And Norris, it's Norris, Hulkenberg, Tsunoda and Ricciardo. And DRS now enabled as Ricciardo trying to go up the inside of Hulkenberg turn 2, but unable to do it. But loads of cars very close to one another there into turn 1. But so on lap 2, and it is Leclerc, Piastri, Perez, Sainz, Verstappen, Russell, Alonso, Colapinto, Albon, Behrman, as there an Alpine of Gasly goes past Bottas. So it's then Tsunoda 11th. Norris has had a good start up to P12. And then it's Hulkenberg, Ricciardo, Gasly, Bottas, Hamilton, Zhou, Ocon, and Stroll. That is your race order on lap 2 of 51, as Norris getting held up massively by Tsunoda, who's already dropped 4 seconds behind Behrman, who's the next car ahead of him. And we haven't even completed 2 laps, as Piastri, thankfully, is within a second of Leclerc, just about, as they're about to enter the pit straight. So we'll see if he can keep hanging on there. But Norris on the hard compound tyre. And Lewis Hamilton actually on the medium back there, as we begin lap 3, and Piastri does indeed have that DRS, and as they come into turn 1, he's only 4 tenths behind, but that is very important for Oscar to keep Leclerc right in front of him. As here comes Lando Norris round the outside on Yuki Tsunoda, but he doesn't get the position. But he goes for the switchback, much more grip than that Racing Bulls car. Can he get the move? Yes, he can. Way more grip under braking, as now Hulkenberg's going to have a go at Tsunoda up to turn 3. So Norris up to 3rd, and Hulkenberg has passed Tsunoda and gone up to 12th. So Tsunoda has lost 2 positions there. But Piastri just trying to hang on at the moment to Leclerc. That's the main fight out front. As let me just update the Lando in 11th on the hard compound tyre. Lando, though, has got a nice bit of clear air. Got about 4.5 seconds of clear air. But he's already, Lando, 15.5 seconds off the lead. And we've not even completed 3 laps. So just shows you how much time these guys outside the top 10 are losing. It's ridiculous. Lewis Hamilton, 20 seconds off the lead in 16th. As Piastri did the fastest lap on the previous occasion, 1:48.9, but he has dropped over a second behind Leclerc, so he won't get the DRS, unfortunately, this time around. As we begin lap 4, Leclerc still in the lead, and does the fastest lap, Leclerc, 1:48.4. As in the background outside the top 10. Absolute chaos. As now Ricciardo is trying to pass his teammate. As a car there slowing down, and it's Tsunoda just let two cars through there. I don't know if he's got a problem. He's just let through his teammate and Gasly. So yeah, I think Tsunoda might have some sort of problem because he's now being overtaken quickly by Hamilton. So something's wrong with Tsunoda as Hamilton goes up the inside.
Was he the one who maybe had contact with Stroll or something like that? That's the
Yeah.
only reason why I could perhaps think.
Yeah, I think it's maybe a front wing end fence might be gone. We can't quite see it though. Here, though, is a replay of the race start. I'll let you take us through it, Nib, once they get to
Yeah,
it.
I'll get to it when it comes to me. And KO Sports is brilliant, as I can probably count the pixels on my screen, so I can't really even call too much of what's going on here. But yeah, Leclerc had a really awesome start actually, as the two Red Bulls capitalized and got up the inside of Sainz and Russell respectively. The Red Bulls did a very good job there. I can't really see too much of what happened behind because I can only really see trees, because I'm probably in about 360p, because KO Sports in Australia is bloody fantastic. And yeah, that was actually quite an impressive move by Max on George. I mean, George maybe a little bit tentative into turn one, you could say, but Max placed his car perfectly and was able to get up the inside quite nicely. But we've already seen that it's quite, as we're seeing Stroll further back here, and he's gone for quite an interesting move up the inside and has definitely given Tsunoda some damage on the right-hand side of his floor. So, yep, as we suspected, Lance Stroll was the cause for that. And what did he say to Tsunoda on the radio?
He said, Tsunoda closed the door on me. That's what he said.
What a load of nonsense.
I mean, I don't think there's ever been a successful overtake really at that corner. It's just not really possible. So I don't know why Lance even bothered going for that. Just no point. But he's paid the price. He's now last. As Piastri gaining back on Leclerc. He's only 0.7 of a second behind. Now 0.8 as they enter the castle section on lap 5. So Piastri fighting back, as Tsunoda is still in 16th place. But yeah, he's losing, compared to the leaders, he's losing like 3 or 4 seconds a lap. So his race is basically over, as Piastri just needs to keep close through turn 15. And then he should be able to follow and get the DRS. As Leclerc, he's pulled out slightly ahead. Can Piastri get within a second? I'm not sure if he can. It's going to be close. And now I think Piastri will just about get it, as they come down onto the pit straight. And has Oscar got it? Yeah, he has. And he does the fastest lap, as the gap goes down to just over half a second. 1:48.0 for Piastri. The pace pretty hot out there at the moment, as we're looking at Russell behind Verstappen. Russell only 0.7 of a second behind Verstappen. Red Bull, very progressive on the first lap, but they haven't gone anywhere since. Perez is 2.5 seconds behind Piastri in third, and Max is falling away from Sainz ahead of him. So Red Bull not quick right now, as Hamilton saying this tyre is pretty bad. He's on the medium compound tyre. Again, it was pretty, I think it was worth starting on the hard tyre for him, but that's what they decided to do. As Leclerc pulling away a lot more on this lap. Gap up to 1.2 seconds. As Verstappen pulling away from Russell now. But the next battle to look out for will be Lando Norris against Oliver Behrman for 10th place. Norris about 2 seconds behind, as Lando is asked how are the tyres, and he says, yeah, they feel all right at the moment. And yeah, when it comes to the front 6, they are all line astern. There's no nothing going on, really, as Leclerc has pulled out massively ahead of Piastri on this lap. Over half a second quicker. And Leclerc does the fastest lap. A 1:48.0, so not a good lap that time around for Piastri. But in the background, the Williamses are hanging on nicely to Alonso. Colapinto's only 1.1 seconds behind Alonso. As Lando Norris is now only a second behind Behrman, so Norris gained a lot in the middle sector. No surprise. Haas were pretty slow in the middle sector in qualifying. I think they were one of the worst teams, actually, in that middle sector. But Behrman doing a good job in P10. And his teammate Hulkenberg not too far behind either. So Haas looking good at the moment. As Lando will slowly but surely gain. The only issue for Lando, of course, coming through the field is that his car, as we saw when he was battling Tsunoda, his car is not the quickest in a straight line. So it's not going to be as easy for him as it would be if he had a Ferrari power unit in the back. But
just letting you know that I'm going to be probably about 20 seconds behind you, just so I can actually even read the timings on the left-hand side of the screen.
yeah,
So
no, that's
if
fine.
I try to actually push it to go to live, it just completely buggers up the quality. But it's not like we're going to miss anything anyway. You know, this is already looking like it's going to be quite the snooze fest.
Yeah, as Leclerc almost 2 seconds clear of Piastri now, as he's beginning lap 8. And the gap, yeah, 1 point, comes down a bit to 1.6 at the end of the straight. But yeah, there's no one. The only battle is Norris and Behrman, which I think we're about to see now. And obviously Lando Norris should easily pass Behrman into turn 1. Behrman doesn't defend, and Norris is up to P10. Given how far Lando is behind Alonso in 7th, Lando should be able to pass Alonso before Alonso pits for the first time. So, yeah, Lando, he's doing well, but obviously still behind Verstappen. So, right. Norris obviously on the hard, and Behrman outside the top 10 now on the medium. As Leclerc now 2.3 seconds clear. This is what Leclerc's doing right now is exactly what I said pre-race he needs to do. Build that gap up to 4 or 5 seconds so that he can avoid the possibility of an undercut. If he can do that, it makes Ferrari's race strategy plan very simple. Just cover off the others at that point. And then Ferrari can probably waltz off to victory. But one thing I am surprised at the moment is Russell. And Red Bull a bit as well. Both teams not anywhere near as quick as I expected. So, and yeah, they are probably managing tyres, but I still think the pace fundamentally is just not as good as it should be. But Russell has just said on the radio that he thinks a plastic bag just went in the left-hand side airbox. Well, that's a disaster if that's happened. As let me just tick over that we're on lap 9. And here is Hulkenberg and Behrman. Hulkenberg nearly passing his teammate into turn 1. No reason for Behrman to move over just yet. But yeah, Leclerc in the lead, 2.5 seconds clear of Piastri. Perez, interestingly, is gaining on Piastri. The gap was 2.5 seconds a few laps ago. Now it's 1.5 seconds. So Perez is coming into play. But Sainz, Verstappen and Russell are just out there touring around at quite a slow pace. And at the minute, Max Verstappen is nearly 10 seconds off the lead after almost 10 laps. So Max, second a lap off the pace. And then Russell, again, even more disappointing. He's, about 13 seconds off the lead after just, 9 laps. As we look here at, I think, Piastri. Yeah, it is. Who continues to fall away from Leclerc, and Perez behind continues to close in. And I think as this stint's going on, Perez, we know, brilliant at managing the tyres, and clearly he's back into the form that we've seen before. He's just getting better as this stint goes on. Perez now only 1.2 seconds behind Piastri, as Piastri about 3 seconds off the lead on lap 10. As here comes Hulkenberg, and he easily goes past Behrman, who I think pretty much led him through. So Hulkenberg up to P11. Lando Norris, interestingly, I know Albon's got DRS in 9th, but Lando is not gaining that much time on the Williamses. Not as much as I would have expected. So, yeah, not great pace for Lando right now. And Norris, for anyone wondering, Lando Norris is about 23, 24 seconds off the lead. And he's about, 13 seconds is Norris behind Verstappen. So he's not close to any of the front runners. As that's a replay of, I think, Bottas letting Zhou through, maybe? And it is. And that's because Zhou's on the hard tyre. That's why they've done that. As we're about to begin lap 11, is Perez still closing on Piastri, but only by slight amounts here and there. As Max saying on the radio, I have 0 bite in this car. And for the second race in a row, Max is stuck outside of a podium position with absolutely no pace. As car in the background, I think Colapinto is the first to make a pit stop. So let's see how that triggers things. Colapinto was doing well, only at 1.7 behind Alonso. Was starting, though, to hold up his teammate as he puts on a set of hard tyres. And he should come out ahead of Tsunoda, who is that slow that he's held up everyone behind him. And Colapinto comes out in 15th place. So there you go. As
shows you how bad Sauber are.
Yeah, exactly. Can't even pass Tsunoda. Is like 4 seconds off the pace.
And also shows you how shit this track is, and how we had some Mickey Mouse fluke years after 2016.
Yeah. Yeah, 2016 was the clear warning that this track is just shit. And like I said, the last couple years have been pretty dreadful here. The last good race here was 2021, but again, it was only because we had just everything going off. Red flag, safety car. I think we had like 3 safety cars in that race. It's just, as I said before, it's impossible to have a naturally good race here at Baku.
Nah, but I heard Jacques Villeneuve talking good about it before, so it must be good.
God, what a fucking twat that guy is. I'm
glad you said it.
I'm surprised Sky are using him, to be honest, because like the only times he gets in the headlines is for just ridiculous fucking opinions, but clearly they want that on their airways. As Fernando Alonso now pits, and we'll see if he comes out behind Colapinto. Pit stop looks good as Leclerc out front, 4 seconds almost, or now he is 4 seconds clear Piastri. So Leclerc doing a perfect job. as Alonso will come out comfortably ahead of Colapinto. So good in lap from Fernando, who drops into 14th position. So Albon in 7th on the hard compound tyre. And so is Lando Norris. But Norris, again, he's still not gaining that much time on Albon. The gap 2 or 3 laps ago was 3.3. Now it's 2.3. So he's gaining. But I would have expected him to gain at least like around a second a lap. But it seems more like half a second a lap. So Albon's pace is very good, as the 2 Haas's are now in the top 10. Hulkenberg and Behrman. Ricciardo in 11th. Obviously going to go long on those hard tyres. So is Gasly. And then Hamilton on the medium in 13th with 0 pace. Literally 0 pace. As
what I was going to say before those pit stops, Chaz, was the only time that they've used Villeneuve is when everyone else is having a holiday. So...
oh, yeah, because, Brundle and Crofty aren't here, are they?
No.
As Max Verstappen comes in. And, well, they had to do it. He didn't have any pace. And they go on to the hard tie. Russell pits as well. And, again, he really had to do it because, again, he had no pace either. But that will put these two back in the pack behind Ricciardo. Verstappen will be, I think, just about. And, and just in front of Gasly. So that's not good for Max. He's now got a load of traffic to deal with, so he's not going to gain anything. But the pace was horrible, so they had to do something. They were not going to gain anything, I think, by staying out. So, Ricciardo up to 9th. Verstappen is 10th. Gasly 11th. Russell 12th. Lewis Hamilton has pitted. Tsunoda has pitted as well. Bottas has pitted. So, Hamilton in 18th. Oh, no, Tsunoda now to last position. They should have started Hamilton on the hard tyre. Don't know why they started him on the medium.
Yeah.
As now a bit of a queue forming behind Ricciardo, who's just trying to do his stint, as Ferrari telling Sainz they're on plan A. And things for Ferrari are looking pretty good. Sainz is only a couple seconds behind Perez, and Perez being dropped by Piastri, but Leclerc continues to drop Piastri. Leclerc 5.1 ahead. So, unless something seriously goes wrong, looks bought and paid for up front. As Perez now pits. So, Sainz up to 3rd. Perez should come out in 6th place. As Verstappen passes Ricciardo. So, Perez is 6th on the hard compound tyre. So, let me update that. So, Albon up to 4th on the hard tyre. Still 2.2 ahead of Norris. Norris is just not got any pace to catch Albon. And Lando is... what? Lando's about 25 seconds off the lead at the moment. So, even if Leclerc or Piastri pit now, they'll come out probably just... Piastri probably come out just ahead of Norris. Leclerc definitely would. So, right. Perez, obviously, on the hard tyre. 2 Haas is still out there on their medium, so they're looking after their tyre as well. Verstappen on the hard. And then Ricciardo on the hard tyre. Alonso 13th on the hard tyre. Everyone now outside of the top 8 is on the hard compound tyre, which, as I said, coming into the race, it was going to be the tyre of choice. Always is here in Baku. As we're on lap 15. And Leclerc about 6 seconds clear. What a performance. Not just by Leclerc, but Ferrari showing their strength right now as Piastri stays out. But thankfully for him, Perez has had to clear some traffic. That traffic being... Well, no, Perez had to clear traffic. No, that was, I think that was Max Verstappen. It's hard to see with the sun who's who coming down that pit straight, as Oliver Behrman has pit. So, yeah, it was Verstappen passing Behrman, who went then off into the pit lane, as Russell there has passed Gasly and Ricciardo, and Gasly ended up passing Ricciardo into turn 1. So, nice move for Gasly, but Russell up to P10, Verstappen up to 8th. Behrman has come out in 16th position on the hard compound tyre. But Piastri is probably going to have to pit either end of this lap or the end of the next lap. Probably end of this lap, because Perez will probably undercut him if he stays out another lap. So we'll see in a moment what Piastri does. Because thankfully for Piastri, his teammate is doing the team orders role. And he's holding up Sergio Perez. As Perez says, yep, he's holding him up. Yeah, as Piastri does come into the pits, and we'll see how close it is. It will be close, as Carlos Sainz stays out, as Perez passes Norris, and Piastri will, yeah, just about by a few tenths of a second gets it done. So perfect there from McLaren. And now Piastri's got to get his tyres up to temperature to avoid Perez slingshotting past him, as Hülkenberg now pits to go onto a set of hard compound tyres. But yeah, that was perfect for McLaren. And there's a replay of Perez passing Norris. Are you surprised with Lando? His pace just isn't that good, is it? Coming through from the field. Don't know if he's burnt his tyres out too quickly, but as there's Tsunoda in the pits out of the race. Yeah, are you surprised at Norris's pace being so poor?
Nope, because you can't follow around this track.
Oh, well, you think he's burnt his tyres out doing that?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, everyone apart from Leclerc is slow, because you can't follow in dirty air around here. It's horrendous.
Yeah. As they're shown on the broadcast now, a hole in the side pod as well, Tsunoda had. So cheers to Lance for that one. As now Leclerc pits, Ferrari doing exactly what they need to, cover off their main rival. As Leclerc pits, lap 17, brilliant pit stop. And if he can come out ahead of Albon, then that would be perfect. It's going to be close, but he is just about going to do it, as Perez does the fastest lap of the race. Right on the back now of Piastri, as Leclerc does come out in second, but Albon right behind him. And Leclerc does not want to let Albon overtake him up to turn 3. But Albon, I don't think is going to bother, because he knows there's no point. So that is great for Leclerc to have a car in between him and Piastri whilst he gets his tyres up to temperature. So Leclerc now on the hard tyre. Also, just updating, Hülkenberg has come out in 13th place after his pit stop. So everyone except for Carlos Sainz, who is about to pit, is on the hard compound tyre. Which shows you just how interesting this race has been. So Hülkenberg 13th, and we'll see how the midfield fight plays out, as we've got a couple position changes out there. Fernando Alonso's up to 9th. Colapinto up to 11th. Behrman is up to 15th. Hamilton up to 16th. As Perez still closely following Norris, who's now... oh no, this is Piastri right behind Albon. As Carlos Sainz now pits. And Oscar absolutely has to make sure he cleanly gets this done. Because Perez is right there. DRS wide open. Waiting for a possible mistake. As Piastri comfortably gets the move done. And he is up to second as now Sainz has pitted. And Carlos Sainz will come out in 6th place. But on fresher tyres. Let's see if we can make better use of these fresh tyres than he did a couple of weeks ago. As we're now on lap 18 of 51. And yeah, everyone now on a set of hard tyres as Oliver Behrman passes Zhou Guanyu. And yeah, that's the order on my screen is exactly the order right now. This is a replay of Lewis Hamilton overtaking someone, sparking away, and he's overtaking Ocon in that replay. Hamilton currently in 16th place. And we're not that far away from halfway through this Grand Prix. Just shows you how bad Lewis Hamilton's race has been. As Perez now is the one being held up by Alex Albon. And Albon doing a great job out there. And if there is a lucky safety car later on, Albon might be able to get quite a few points here. But still heading for probably a couple points anyway. Because once he pits, later on, he will be very quick. As Perez down the pit straight, up to 3rd. On now lap.
I did notice...
Go on.
I did notice earlier how much Hamilton was sparking. It was quite weird. Like, even through the fake Porsche S's, like, he was absolutely sparking away. The car actually almost looked unstable at the rear going through there, as Piastri is within a second of Leclerc. But, I mean, he'll probably fall back out of that once they go through the middle sector.
Yeah, and we're now seeing Piastri on board. They're just entering the heart of the lap. Yeah, I think that could be maybe why Hamilton's been so slow. Since with yesterday in qualifying as well, because I mean that's clearly a setup issue, whatever that is. So, yeah, and Hamilton at the minute is just behind Oliver Behrman, going a lot quicker on the hard tyre now than he was on the medium, but I mean, he's still miles behind.
And well, that's the thing. They changed the setup of Hamilton's car as well, they said. So, I don't know what's going on there.
No. As Piastri's still just about hanging on. I think if he has a good turn 15 here, then he might be able to get DRS down the pit straight, and yes, he will. He actually had a better turn 15 there as Leclerc now moving around, try and break the slipstream. So here we go. Oscar Piastri clearly done a better job warming his tyres up. And he's in the slipstream, DRS, but he's not going to be close enough, I don't think, to go for a move into turn 1. No, he's going to go for it! What an overtake! Oscar Piastri into the lead, but Leclerc comes back. But oh my God, what a boy this kid is. What a move. That was from so far back. As Leclerc, now DRS up to turn 3. Can he get the position back? No, he can't. What a move by Oscar Piastri. And he leads the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. And this race springs finally into life. Wow.
Oh my God.
I thought, no way is he going to go for that. And not only that, he didn't go wide or anything. It was perfect. is a replay. He has absolutely mugged Leclerc off there. What a move. And I think at this rate, we'd have to say Piastri is probably the best overtaker on the grid at the moment. 2 unbelievable overtakes for the lead in 2 consecutive races. And now, look at this. A 3-way fight for the lead with the 2 cars behind Piastri got DRS. It ain't over. As Perez now joins the fight. And let's see, after Piastri did that to Leclerc, let's see if Leclerc's going to be that aggressive to Oscar. The Ferrari, we have to remember, is pretty quick down the straights as they come down to turn 1. Leclerc, no, he doesn't even dare move to the inside. And Piastri holds the lead. That is an unbelievable overtake. I don't care what anyone says. That is beautiful, perfect dive bomb. And with 30 laps to go, we now have a 3-way fight between 3 different teams for the win of this race. Just, what are your thoughts there on that overtake there?
I mean, for Christ's sake, he's made Leclerc look like Bottas. Like, what a move! My God.
It's just, I'm amazed. Absolutely amazed that, 1, he went for it, but again, didn't go wide, didn't lock up. Obviously, Leclerc got a better exit from the corner, but just a perfect corner, perfect overtake. And if he does go on to win, then that obviously will be the moment you can say he got it done. Because I don't think anyone else would have gone for that. But he did. As he's now pushing as hard as possible towards the end of the lap to pull away from Leclerc. As Lando says he's struggling a little bit. Lando in 5th place, but Lando has not pitted yet, remember. As we're now on lap 21, about to go on to lap 22. Leclerc 8 tenths behind with DRS. Perez 7 tenths behind Leclerc with DRS as well. As they all pile down to turn 1. But still not close enough. I did say, coming into the race, looking at the speed trap data, that Ferrari had put, clearly, more wing on their car because they were the 2nd slowest at the start-finish line speed trap yesterday and were actually a tad slower than McLaren. So, Ferrari, obviously not being helped by that, but obviously they weren't expecting to be in this position. As Leclerc saying they are pushing like crazy. Do they have more grip than us? Or okay, they have more grip than us. One of the two. I couldn't quite see the first bit of that, but
I'll let you know.
Let me just update quickly before I forget. We're on lap 22. But yeah. Wow.
He said they are pushing like crazy, or they have more grip than us.
Yeah.
So some good broken English there.
As Perez, still hanging on. Perez has done the fastest lap as well. And he's hanging on to the back of these two. As Max Verstappen is right behind Carlos Sainz. And the reason that is because Sainz is stuck behind Norris. As Colapinto is now into the top 10. As Behrman has passed Ricciardo as well. As Piastri, as they're coming onto the pit straight now, slightly further ahead of Leclerc, only by a few hundredths of a second than he was the previous time around. And that will keep Piastri ahead. But Piastri has older tyres, but only 1 lap older. So it's not a massive difference. As there you go. Carlos Sainz overtakes Lando Norris into turn 1. And now Verstappen must pass the man trying to catch him in the championship. And he's got to do it as quickly as he can because he cannot let Carlos Sainz get away too quickly. Because if Max can get at least 4th from this race, and that's what he's racing for with Sainz, a net 4th place, then yeah, that is still a decent result for Max. As we now cut to the front 3 battle. Piastri, Leclerc, Perez. And Piastri just needs to keep pushing in this middle sector to pull over a second ahead. And he's doing that. He's very close to getting over a second ahead and getting out DRS. But Leclerc still pushing hard, and obviously so is Sergio Perez.
Yeah, and this is the only way that Piastri has a chance of winning this race, is to continue to keep these guys behind. Hopefully that the dirty air and ruins their tyres, and by the pace that they're doing, ruins their tyres at least at the same level or even worse than he is. And that's probably the way that he's hoping he can win this race at the moment.
Yeah, as Leclerc not close enough, anywhere near close enough to have a move on Piastri into turn 1. And as you say, I mean, Leclerc and Perez in the dirty areas. Sainz there overtakes Albon as Norris defending hard against Verstappen. But Max is not going to give up so easily. As he gets a good exit from turn 2 and surely will get this move done into turn 3. Tries to dummy, but Lando saw it coming. And Lando holds him back. I don't think Max should have bothered. He should have gone for the outside line. He would have had more grip, I think, to get that move done. But he went for the dummy. But Lando, like I said, he covered it off. So Max stays behind yet another lap. And this is costing him dearly in the fight with Carlos Sainz, who's in 4th. So we wait to see if Max will have another go. I'm sure he will in a few corners' time. Lewis Hamilton is up to 14th. As Mercedes telling Hamilton, okay, Lewis, everything you can do to get the surface temp down. And he says, I'm trying. Hamilton stuck in 14th place with absolutely 0 pace. As Piastri has almost pulled over a second clear of Leclerc. Perez has fallen just over a second behind, so I wonder if he will lose DRS, but I don't think Leclerc will. Yeah, Perez has lost the DRS as Piastri does the fastest lap, but Leclerc just about kept himself within a second. As Sainz now pulls away from Albon and those cars behind us. Verstappen fallen back a bit on Norris.
He made a mistake at turn 15.
Oh, right. And Max saying on the radio, my brakes are not working.
Yeah, he had to cut the inside of turn 15.
Right. Well, he's still close enough now. He's got DRS on Lando up to turn 3. So still isn't letting Lando get away. And, I mean, championship-wise, it's still not too bad for Max. He's heading for a net 5th. Lando, and yeah, there's the cutting the inside. With Lando stuck behind Albon, and then we have to remember Albon was behind Colapinto and Alonso. Lando might only get a couple points out of this race, so Max could still pull away by 8 points or so. So it's not the end of the world, but we'll have to see where everyone is at the end. But Max just needs to get past Lando and get this done so he can get up the road and have a comfortable second half of the race. As we are now halfway through this Azerbaijan Grand Prix, as Piastri almost pulling over a second clear of Leclerc again, but Leclerc keeping himself within a second. Just want to say quickly, as we are halfway through, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this, because we do plenty of watch-alongs through the season. And make sure as well to smash the like button if you haven't already for more content like this. And obviously does help the channel grow and helps us in the algorithm. As we're on lap 26 and Verstappen still not close enough to Norris down the pit straight, as Norris now getting held up by Alex Albon ahead, and that's why Lando's not easy to overtake now for Max. But Max, good exit from turn 2. Lando covers the inside slightly, but Max I don't think was going to go for a move. But for Alex Albon, who is the highest placed driver who hasn't pitted yet, and obviously started on the hard tyre, once Albon pits, he will come out probably behind Pierre Gasly, and Pierre Gasly's currently in 12th place behind Hulkenberg. And then if he comes out there, let's say if he was to pit now, he would be about 6 or 7 seconds behind his teammate Colapinto, but obviously would be on fresher tyres, and medium compound tyres. But I don't think Albon is going to pit yet. I think it's going to be still quite a long time until he comes in. Probably another 10 laps, I'd imagine. As Russell says, what lap do we expect Albon and Norris to box? And Mercedes say we're thinking at least another 10 laps for them. As Leclerc, bit closer, coming down to turn 1, but still not close enough. And yeah, it should be another 10 laps before they come in. They're hoping for a safety car. Especially Norris, who on lap 27 has DRS on Albon, but he's not going to be close enough to overtake. But this race has spiced up nicely, especially at the front, as Sergio Perez is slowly falling away from the top 2 now, but Leclerc is keeping up that pressure out front. So he's not letting Piastri waltz away, but if Piastri can get over a second clear, then I do feel that Oscar might be able to slowly but surely pull the gap as Leclerc's tyres continue to wear in the dirty air of the McLaren. And Leclerc still following. And these last couple races has been classic F1. McLaren versus Ferrari for the race win. Exactly how we want it. As Leclerc a lot closer to Piastri as they come into turn 16. And yeah, Piastri hasn't had the greatest lap, but I think might just still be a bit too far ahead for Leclerc. As they come down the pit straight. And Leclerc, DRS open. But yeah, he's not close enough. And the Ferrari isn't quick enough down the straights because they've got a bit too much wing on the car. So it is working out just about well enough for McLaren. As still, Verstappen is stuck behind Norris and Albon. Working out well this trio of cars holding each other up. Working out well for George Russell in 8th place, who's almost caught up to this pack of cars. But yeah, no one's going to be making any overtakes, I don't think, up to turn 3. I'm
quickly going to run to the... Oh, go. You can ask me a question before I go to the toilet. Yep.
Well, no, I was going to quickly say how far behind Hamilton was, so you can go to the toilet if you want.
Okay. Yep. I'll be back shortly.
Right. As yeah, once they show the gaps again, I'll let you guys know how far behind Lewis Hamilton is, just to illustrate how bad of a day Hamilton is having. But they're not showing the gaps at the moment. They're showing how many or who's pitted and who hasn't. Right, so there you go. Now they've shown it. So 11, 19, 21, 22, 35, 37, 41, Lewis Hamilton is about 47 seconds off the lead. And it's lap 28. So, yeah, Lewis is going to end up well over a minute behind the race winner. Maybe even a minute 10 or so. As Leclerc a lot closer to Piastri on this occasion. Piastri moves to the inside. Can Leclerc take the outside line? No, he can't. But he will get a better exit, but it's not quite good enough for him to go for the overtake. As Leclerc continues to keep up that pressure, but he doesn't get a good enough exit from turn 2, sorry. And that will keep Piastri in the lead. But Piastri is coming under more pressure now from the Monegasque, as Perez should be closing in behind a bit more than he was before. So Leclerc just need to keep that pressure up. And if he can keep, if he can get Piastri to the point where Piastri's having to defend every lap, then eventually Piastri will have to give in because he'll destroy his tyres moving offline so much. And Lewis saying on the radio, "Are you seeing how I have to drive this thing?" And the response is, "Copy that, Lewis. It's effective though. It's effectively shit in terms of the time on track. Like I said, nearly 50 seconds he is off the lead after almost 30 laps. That is truly horrible."
And that was perfect defending by Oscar.
Absolutely. And Leclerc, we'll see how close he can be on this occasion. I'm not sure he's as close, but it still will be close as Piastri moves to the inside a bit to move out. And no, Leclerc not as close on this occasion, but about a couple tenths of a second further back than he was before. But for Leclerc, he just needs to keep Piastri under pressure and hope that Piastri's tyres fall away or that Piastri makes a mistake. If that doesn't happen, then fair play to Oscar if he ends up holding off Leclerc here and winning. But for Leclerc, that's what he's got to do because Oscar is lapping at a very good speed, even though Leclerc's pressurizing him so much. And
this is going to be a long end to the race for me.
Yeah. Very long last 20 laps or so. Once again, Carlos Sainz in fourth, not lapping as well, I don't think, as his teammate, even though he's on fresher tyres by a lap or so. So I don't really know why Sainz is lapping as slow as he is. As Behrman passes Gasly for 12th. Gasly still has not pitted. So clearly, him and Ricciardo have not pitted. They're both obviously hoping for a safety car. As now Lewis Hamilton passes Gasly for 13th. But Piastri, Leclerc, probably a half a tenth or so closer, I think, on this occasion. As they go through the kinks. And DRS opens now. And this is going to be close, I think. Close-ish into turn 1. And Piastri moves to the inside just about as Lando is told to box from 6th place. So he is finally, his awful stint has come to an end. As we're on lap 31. And Piastri, thankfully for him, gets a great exit from turn 2. It's a good enough exit and that keeps him ahead as Leclerc doesn't bother for a move into turn 3. As Perez,
I feel like turn 3 is too hard to get the move done. It's going to be turn 1, which is crucial.
Or maybe into turn 2 if he gets like a really good exit from turn 1 or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, I was going to say Perez still hanging on. So if these two, if they do battle too much, Perez is keeping Red Bull's interest in the win still right there. which of course helps for the Constructors' Championship if Perez can move up from third, as Piastri still got Leclerc all over the back of him. And in terms of the Constructors' Championship, Red Bull, once Albon and Norris are pitted, they'll be third and fifth. That's 25 points for them. McLaren currently heading for 25 points. Lando, though, he'll need to get a few points gained on Red Bull. But I don't think McLaren are going to overtake Red Bull in the championship today, but it will be close. Ferrari, though, heading for at least 30 points. But if they can win, then they'll gain the most out of the top three. As Leclerc, not close enough into turn one. On now lap 32. As Lando Norris a bit further back should be coming into the pits. As Sergio Perez almost getting within a second. As here is Verstappen and Russell. Side by side into turn one. Russell trying to pass Verstappen, but Max keeps him back. As Alex Albon actually is the one who's pitted. So we'll see where Albon comes out. Should be probably maybe ahead of Behrman. If it's not ahead of Behrman, then it should be ahead of Hamilton. And Albon comes out in 10th, right in front, and I mean literally right in front of Hülkenberg by about 0.2 of a second. As Hülkenberg now having a go at turn 3, and Hülkenberg gets the move done. So Albon P11, but Albon should be pretty quick on those medium tyres now. So Albon 11th on the medium. As Leclerc pretty close out of the final proper corner. This is going to be another go for Leclerc. As he gets right in the slipstream. And it's about half a second the gap as the DRS opens. Here we go. Charles Leclerc, can he take the lead now? Piastri moves to the inside. Leclerc to the outside. And he's going to have to do the switchback again. And he gets the switchback a lot more correct this time. But gets now to the outside line for turn 2. Does he get a good enough exit? No, he doesn't. Bit of oversteer, and that might cost him up to turn 3, and it will. So it's just that exit of turn 2. If he could have just got that right, he could have had another go. But now Perez right on the back of Leclerc, waiting for a mistake. As Carlos Sainz, I think, is now starting to gain in 4th place.
My God, this is F1.
Yeah, this is exactly what we were wanting. As Max says, I have no rear grip. The car is just jumping on the rear. And that's clearly why Max is so slow. Max Verstappen is, remember, he was only, fighting with Carlos Sainz a few laps ago. Max is a second and a half behind Norris, and Norris is 14 seconds behind Carlos Sainz. So Max has lost an unbelievable amount of time to Sainz, who he was battling. And that just shows you how slow Albon and Norris were on their old tyres and how Max lost just so much behind them. But yeah, brilliant defense from Piastri again, putting his car exactly where he needed to. And thankfully for him, Leclerc is nowhere near him as they come down the pit straight to begin lap 34. Do you think he can hang on to the end with how Leclerc's going?
No comment.
To be fair,
I don't know. It's going to be ridiculous drive if he does.
I absolutely think he can, because with how wide these cars are, you're going to need like a lot of grip. As Russell up the inside of Max Verstappen, and George Russell is up to 6th. He was threatening to do it a couple laps ago, and now he's done it. And Max is clearly struggling. He's miles off the pace in 7th. But, I mean, you would say with Max, go and put another set of tyres on, but he can't do that because Norris is ahead of him. So he's got to stay out as Max. But, yeah, with how wide these cars are, you've got to have, I mean, unless you do what Piastri did, just an incredible move like that, you've got to have like a lot of your car ahead into the braking zone, don't you, to get a move done. So as long as Oscar can keep enough of his car ahead in the braking zone, I think he should be able to hang on as long as his tyres can hang on. As Piastri once again too far ahead of Leclerc as they come down to the pit straight. So thankfully, no more defending for Piastri for the moment. But yeah, Carlos Sainz in 4th place is now gaining a lot of time on this top 3. The gap was 7.7 from Sainz to Perez. It's now 6 seconds.
Yeah, Sainz was out at 9 seconds. Probably around about the 26th lap or so. So he's gained quite a lot.
Yeah, so Sainz will join this party pretty soon. As outside of this top 3 battle, the only other thing to look out for is with Lando Norris, of course, is when he is going to pit, because he needs to give himself, or McLaren need to give themselves enough time on fresh tyres to overtake some cars. Obviously, they're hoping still for a safety car. As DRS Open, who is this? This is a Williams being hunted down by Hulkenberg and Albon. So Colapinto here defending in 9th from Hulkenberg in 10th. And Albon on the fresh mediums in 11th. And then I think just up the road is Alonso in the Aston Martin. And it is. So very close in the midfield as well. Still plenty to be decided in the top 10 in these final 15 laps or so. Don't go anywhere. As Zhou Guanyu, I've just seen at the bottom, is coming in for a pit stop. So he should drop to the very back. As here is Leclerc as they come onto the pit straight again. Bit closer this time than he was the lap before, but I still don't think he's close enough to go for it. But here we go. DRS Open in the slipstream. And no. Just not close enough. As we go on to lap 36. And that's a look on the TV broadcast at the Drivers' Championship. Lando currently getting 10 points. That's only because he hasn't pitted. Leclerc gaining 18. Piastri, of course, gaining 25. For Lando Norris, though, I think what they're doing, McLaren, is they're trying to build a lead to Alonso in 8th so that he can pit and come out in 7th place ahead of Alonso. As here comes Nico Hulkenberg. And he goes past Franco Colapinto for 9th. Brilliant from Hulk after a bad qualifying. And he's up in now 9th place. Lewis Hamilton there in the background. He's still a factor. Now that he's got the surface temperature of his tyres down, I believe. As that's a replay of Leclerc oversteering at turn 16. Pushing hard as he's just been told on the radio, come on, Charles, keep it up. It's all yellow flag in sector 1. Now gone green, so probably just saw it at turn 1 going deep. As
I think McLaren do have that gap to Alonso, by the way.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, I think, it's about 20, 21 seconds, so we'll probably see Lando win in the next couple laps. As Leclerc not close enough again to Piastri. But still, gap half a second as they come through turn 1. As we're now on lap 37. 15 full laps remain of what's been, you have to say, it started off as a very dull race in Baku, now turned into a great race in Baku.
I'm very confused. I just turned the commentary on because I saw Leclerc had a team message, and it was box opposite to McLaren. That what?
Yeah, I don't. I don't get that. We'll see what happens. But this is who's this? This is Albon trying to pass Hulkenberg. Albon has got past Colapinto, probably been let through because obviously Albon on fresh tyres. As now, Colapinto under pressure. I think Colapinto may have burnt his tyres out because he's now under massive pressure from Behrman and Hamilton for 11th place. So Albon, let me just update that he is on the medium, not the hard compound tyre. But yeah, there's no way that Ferrari can pit Leclerc because all that's going to do is ensure that Piastri and Perez stay out. If Perez wasn't in the mix, if he was like out of the race, then I think Leclerc, yeah, you could probably try that. But with Perez there, only a couple seconds back, they can't do that. No way.
Yeah, I was shocked when I heard that. There's no way you can pit now.
No. If they were going to try a two-stop, if they were going to pit, they should have probably done it about 5 laps ago.
And Sainz is even too close now.
Yeah. Sainz is about 8 seconds or so. Or actually closer than that, about 6.5 seconds behind. As here comes Lando Norris. Finally makes his pit stop for the medium compound tyre, and he will go into 7th place. And his championship rival Verstappen in 6th is still gaining points on Lando, but only 2 points. But if Lando can take the fastest lap point, then Max will only have a gain of a point, which you'd have to say is a pretty good save from McLaren if it ends up that way. As Colapinto still under pressure from Behrman, who's really close to him as they're coming up to turn 3. Will Behrman have a think? No, Colapinto blocks the track nicely to keep himself ahead. But yes, Sainz continues to catch Perez, so I think we could see maybe both Ferraris on the podium before, at the end of this race, because Carlos is still consistently catching. As Leclerc still keeping the pressure on with the DRS, but still ain't close enough to actually go for the overtake. As they come down to turn 1, and Piastri, who is a very calm driver, as we've seen in the last couple of years. He's not someone who gets, flummoxed easily. And he can definitely keep running like this, no problem. As Albon is up to 10th now or up to 9th, sorry, on the medium compound tyre. And Albon is 2.2 seconds behind Alonso. So if Williams can get 4 points out of this race, that'll put them only 3 points behind Alpine in the championship. A crucial result that would be for Williams. As McLaren telling Lando, we want best pace to the end to try and beat Verstappen. Be surprised if they beat Verstappen, but Max's pace is pretty bad.
Ferrari asked Leclerc about Plan C, and Leclerc said, "I'm not stupid."
Yeah. Thank God
Plan C would obviously
that.
be a two-stopper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank God he said that, because, yeah, it is not worth going for. And still, Behrman and Hamilton are stuck behind Colapinto. Still doing a good job, Colapinto. He may have burnt his tyres out, but still doing well, and if if there's still a DNF or two out there, he may still end up in the top 10 as Piastri still too far ahead of Leclerc as they come down the pit straight. And Leclerc, I admire his relentlessness, as Leclerc saying Piastri is starting to struggle, and his engineer says copy, keep it up. I'm not sure if that is true. But yeah, I admire Leclerc's relentlessness, but I would not be surprised if he starts to fall away, given how long he's been in the dirty air of that McLaren. But Leclerc looks pretty determined to win this race, as Lando Norris takes the fastest lap. So there you go. So at the minute, Max Verstappen only extends his championship lead by a single point, up to 63 points. And obviously next week in Singapore, you'd imagine McLaren will be miles ahead of Red Bull. So not a great day for Red Bull as it stands. As McLaren telling Norris, imagine Andrea on your shoulder saying 0 wheel spin every exit. What a fucking weird thing to say. Clearly, Andrea holds some fear within the team, though. As that's Leclerc, replay of him getting close to the wall, the exit at turn 3. As here is Leclerc, he's closer this time. As they come onto the pit straight, half a second behind as the DRS now opens. And Piastri, he's going to have to defend again. But Leclerc still doesn't have enough of his car alongside to actually go around the outside. And he doesn't quite get the switch back. What about through turn 3? No, Piastri gets a perfect exit. And you have to say, even if Leclerc eventually passes Piastri cleanly, this defensive driving from Piastri is, again, just like his overtake, absolutely perfect. Putting his car in the exact right place and then getting the exactly perfect exit from the corners so that Leclerc can't get a run on him. It is a driving lesson out there from Piastri as Leclerc tries an audacious racing line there through turn 7 and 8. But Leclerc, as all getting close there between Hamilton and Behrman, the two Brits down to turn 1, and Hamilton takes the position. That was nice, hard racing between a driver in Behrman who might be replacing Lewis Hamilton at Ferrari in a few years. But Lewis Hamilton in the Mercedes for now is up to P12. But Leclerc still close to Oscar as they come through to now the pit straight. Not as close as last time, though. But I think Oscar might still have to move over to the inside to defend as he comes down the pit straight. Leclerc. And Piastri does move over, but more so to the middle of the track. And once again, perfect exit from Piastri.
Because Andrea's on his shoulder, mate.
As Piastri, good momentum he keeps up as well through turn 2, as Perez still in the background. As according...
I feel physically sick.
Yeah, if I was a fan of Piastri or Leclerc, my heart would be racing so much. It's going to be an incredibly tense finish. As according to AWS, Lando Norris is going to be overtaking Verstappen in 8 laps' time. So that's why Piastri had Leclerc closer to him. He got a bit too high on that curb at turn 16.
Both of them did actually. If you watch close enough, both of them had the exact same moment.
As Piastri, thankfully, has pulled over a second ahead as they're coming up to turn 15. So crucial couple corners here for Leclerc. He's got to keep himself within a second, and he does gain a bit more time back. But Piastri, out of the exit of the castle section, it went up to, I think, 1.1 seconds. So bit of a scare there for Leclerc. But as they come down the pit straight again, Leclerc not close enough to actually go for a move. Carlos Sainz, though, you might just see in the background, he's 2.7 seconds behind Perez. Perez, though, is getting DRS from the back of Leclerc and Piastri, of course. So that is helping Perez in that fight to stay in third. As Piastri pretty far clear up to turn 3. But yeah, there's still going to be for Leclerc at least a couple more chances for him to overtake as Lando Norris does another fastest lap, 1:45.2. And at this rate, Norris, he might overtake Verstappen. And if he does, Max is going to be absolutely miserable after this race, and probably ranting and raving as well about how bad the car feels. But he has every right to, because that car, his car at least, has been so off the pace from lap 1, really. As Perez told, there's back markers coming up. It's going to get messy. And those back markers, I think, might be the Saubers, and then, yeah, be the Saubers, and then Stroll and Ocon. Stroll, I think, is about to try and pass Ocon as well. So if these lot catch them really quickly, then that, yeah, might get a bit messy. And that is one thing at street circuits. Lapping back markers is a crucial thing in terms of when you do it and how you do it. As into turn 1, Piastri still too far ahead of Leclerc. As he exit turn 1, and Piastri clearly ahead by half a second.
I don't want to jinx things too much, Chaz, but for the second lap in a row, just before the castle section, and then after the castle section, Piastri's extending the gap to over a second. So I think Leclerc might be struggling on the rear tyres just ever so slightly now.
Yeah, I think we might, yeah, just be these last couple laps definitely see the tyres of Leclerc finally drop off after being in the dirty air for so long. As we've now got the top 4 separated by just under 4 seconds. And then meanwhile, you got Russell in 5th, 15.5 seconds behind Sainz in 4th. Them lot in a completely different race. But Leclerc, closer out of the castle section than he was before. And a lot closer now by the looks of it.
Much closer.
Leclerc has been very strong through turn 15, 16. And does he get a good exit? It's good, but it's going to be close. Put it that way, down to turn 1. As he gets right in the slipstream. And DRS opens. Piastri will probably have to move to the inside to defend yet again. And Leclerc, Piastri does move to the middle. But Leclerc doesn't really gain anything on Piastri because of how well Piastri's exits are. And yet again, great exit from Piastri in turn 2. But that's the key, is Leclerc, if he can keep close enough through the exit the castle section up until like turn 16, then that might be where Leclerc is able then to get the move done later on. As still some other battles out there, remember. Lando Norris still catching Verstappen. Albon, just over a second behind Alonso in the battle for 8th. As we're now on board with Lando Norris, who, according to AWS, will be in striking distance in 4 laps' time. And if Lando can pass Max and take the fastest lap, that will be a gain of 3 points. That'll put the gap down to 59 points going into Singapore, where Lando has to win next week, without doubt, if he wants to win the championship. But we need to be looking at what's going on out front. And coming into turn 16. And slight bit of oversteer there for Leclerc, and not a great exit. So Piastri will hang on yet again, I think, down into turn 1. As we are just over, we're about 6 laps or so to go in this enthralling race in Baku. Slow to get going, but this has turned into exactly what we wanted. A proper fight for victory between 2 world-class drivers. And
that first stint was generally a 0 out of 10, but then I don't know what on earth has happened in the second stint.
It was that Piastri overtake. It just woke up the whole race. And then since then, it's just been just way, way better. But you'd have to say, at the moment, Piastri and Leclerc in these last couple races have been the 2 best performing. As that's just a replay of Piastri touching the wall there. Exit turn 15 previous time round, but he didn't hit it that hard. It was a graze. As there is Andrea Stella. What a job he's done at McLaren. Turned them from nearly back markers to race winners and potentially title winners. And McLaren, if Norris can pass Verstappen, Norris will take home 9 points, Piastri 25. That's 34 points. And then Red Bull would take home 21 points. That means that McLaren would be leading the Constructors' Championship. But there is still, even though it's just over 5 laps to go, it's still quite a long way to go. But look, Piastri has pulled over a second ahead of Leclerc. And as they come down the pit straight, Leclerc will not have the DRS. And that might be crucial if Piastri now, on some better tyres, can now push on and get away and let Leclerc come under pressure from Perez. As we're now lap 47. 5 laps remain. And I think Piastri, he may have just survived the worst of the onslaught, as Stroll has pitted and retired from the race. So he is out. Let me just update that. As, Piastri 1.3 clear. So I think he has survived the Leclerc onslaught. And surely, as long as he just keeps it together, keeps it away from the barriers, surely Oscar Piastri is going to hang on and take a memorable win around the streets of Baku. As Leclerc, rear end really sliding around now. So I think his tyres have definitely suffered there, or definitely suffering now, as Carlos Sainz now within a second of Sergio Perez. And Piastri now 1.7 clear as they come onto the pit straight of Leclerc. The only thing Piastri has to worry about is a couple back markers ahead, which I think is the 2 Saubers. But now the fight is all about second. Can Perez take second from Leclerc? Could Ferrari maybe even get both cars on the podium? We'll have to see. As Leclerc says, no rear tyres, no rear tyres. And Thomas Perez going to go around the outside. Is he at to turn 3? No. But yeah, Leclerc, and a great spot from you, Nib, about his rear tyres, because he is all over the place now. And now almost 2.5 seconds behind Piastri. He gave it everything to win this race, but it wasn't enough. And now he's going to try and hang on for dear life just to finish in second place.
Well, I'm going to say, Chaz, last lap, Piastri, personal best lap.
Be great if he could, as Perez, for the Constructors' Championship, has got to pass Leclerc here. Max, back in 6th, is now coming under pressure from Norris, who's only a second behind Max. So Perez, there is something on the line here. He has to overtake. And Carlos Sainz has had a great second half of the race that we haven't really seen much of in terms of his speed. But as they exit turn 16, Perez has got a decent exit. Isn't good enough, though. Perez and, well, Red Bull were, I think, 5th or 6th best team in the speed trap in qualifying. Ferrari was second worst. So Red Bull might have the straight line speed here to overtake Leclerc. Here comes Perez. Leclerc defends very well the middle of the trackers. We're on lap 49. 3 laps remain. Make sure to stick around until after the race, guys. We'll obviously do a quick reaction and we'll let you know who our driver of the days are as well. As here comes Norris to overtake Max Verstappen. Does he round the outside? And he does on fresh tyres. Lando Norris is up to 6th, which completes a disaster of a race for Verstappen. And Norris, credit to him, may not have had the best pace at times, but he has done as well as you really could have imagined he could have, given that we haven't had, surprisingly, a safety car in this Grand Prix. As Piastri even further comfortable out front. As he's, I think, over 3 seconds clear now. Leclerc, I think, has to deal with traffic as they exit the castle section. As they're coming down to turn 15. And, yeah, Leclerc's got a Sauber ahead of him. As Colapinto has passed Nico Hulkenberg out of nowhere. So Hulkenberg, he made a mistake or his tyres have fallen off. So Colapinto, just about with a couple laps to go, is heading for a point. But he's still got Hulkenberg right behind him, and Hamilton and Behrman. So it's still mightily close in there. As here comes Sergio Perez. Can he get the move done on Leclerc into turn 1? Leclerc dive bombs back to try and protect second and pushes Perez almost off the track, which puts Carlos Sainz up to 3rd. And Perez now tries to undercut Sainz through turn 2. Oh, big contact! Oh, massive crash! As Max Verstappen pits. And that will probably be a red flag, and that should probably be the race over and done with. What a big
to
crash.
Me, that looked like Sainz just drove completely across the line of Perez there.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see what the stewards or the race control do now. Whether they go for a safety car or a red flag. I'd prefer a safety car just to get this race finished with. But I wouldn't be surprised at all if they go for a red flag. It is a replay. So Perez goes for the outside line on Leclerc. Leclerc dive bombs hard to get the position back. Perez will probably complain about that, but I think Leclerc did just about okay there. I don't think that was any issue. And then Perez gets a great exit from turn 2. It's hard to see if Sainz veers over. If he does, it's like slightly. Let's see this angle.
Yeah, the overhead didn't look as bad as what I sort of thought on the first look. Yeah.
But that was a hard hit in the barrier.
Yeah, that's going to be nasty.
But it is on board Sainz. Yeah, he was very slightly veering Sainz. Very, very slightly, if you look at the steering wheel. But I think they may just call that a racing incident. But they get virtual safety car as we're on the final lap of this just incredible Azerbaijan Grand Prix. And because of that crash, George Russell is on the podium. Out of nowhere, Lando Norris will finish in 4th and Max Verstappen will finish in 5th. And then it will be Alonso 6th, Albon 7th and Colapinto 8th. What a result for Williams. That's 10 points and that'll be them up to 8th in the championship. Hamilton 9th and Behrman will score a point in 10th. And then it'll be Hulkenberg and then the rest. But nib quickly before the end, Oscar Piastri about to win for the second time in Formula One. One unbelievable overtake, an unbelievable drive by your man.
I can't believe it. I mean, Ferrari really struggled with that hard tyre warm-up, and he took full advantage. He had to go for the move, and absolute worldy of a move. And it's not by mistake. It's been 2 races in a row. My God.
What a driver this guy is. Every race he does, he goes up a lot in everyone's estimations as he comes through the final couple corners. And after a perfect drive at Monza, but he deserved a win just as much as Leclerc did a couple weeks ago. He is going to take his second win of the Formula One season, and a thoroughly deserved one after a perfect overtake, perfect defending, perfect driving. Oscar Piastri wins in Baku. McLaren take their first ever win in Baku. Piastri wins. Leclerc second. Russell third. Lando Norris fourth. Great result for him. And a great result for McLaren. McLaren now lead the Constructors' Championship. For the first time, I think in 12 years, do they lead the Constructors' Championship. Max Verstappen comes home 5th. He pitted right as that Perez-Sainz accident happened. Alonso 6th. Albon 7th. Colapinto 4 points in his second only F1 race. Lewis Hamilton 9th. Oliver Behrman in his second F1 race gets points again. Hulkenberg 11th. Gasly 12th. Ricciardo in 13th. And then Zhou 14th. Ocon 15th. Bottas 16th. And your retirements: Carlos Sainz, Sergio Perez, Lance Stroll, and Yuki Tsunoda. What a race. And that race right there has proven me wrong. You can have a naturally good race in Baku. It only took 8 years. But there you go. That was just, yeah. After that overtake from Piastri, that was a just perfect race for what you could get here in Baku.
Sorry, I'll just Piastri's team radio. Well, that was probably the most stressful afternoon of my life. Oh my God.
Let me just quickly set up the drive of the day vote. For me, the drive of the day is clear. It is Oscar Piastri without doubt, but I'll set it up anyway. Who do you think is drive of the day for the Azerbaijan Grand Prix? Shout out Leclerc as well. Even though his tyres fell off at the end, it was still a great performance. gave it everything he had, but Piastri was just too good. And that's what you have to say if you're Leclerc at the end. Just, well done, too good. There was nothing Leclerc could have done, I don't think, to, different. I mean, yeah, could have warmed his tyres up better, but you just got to give credit to Piastri there. So Piastri, Leclerc, Norris I'll throw in there, and Colapinto as well. But yeah, clearly for me, driver of the day, Oscar Piastri, who is even closer now to his teammate in the championship, at only 12 points closer. The gap's still 30 or 40 points or so. Piastri, a bit closer to Leclerc in the championship, but still, I think the gap is like 13 points now between third and fourth. But yeah, championship-wise, everything kind of remains the same. Lando 3 points closer to Max, which is obviously great for him. But yeah, things kind of the same championship-wise going into Singapore. But like I said, for Lando, he has to win next week in Singapore if he's going to win this championship. But he's going to have some competition, mainly from his teammate, and maybe Leclerc and some others as well. Brilliant race. Out of 10, what would you give that? I'd give that an 8. I thought that was one of the best races we've seen lately.
I'll give that an 8 as well, I think. I mean, generally, the first stint was so bad that, I was like, my internet was, I don't know what's going on with my K. My internet is absolutely fine, but I was going to just restart my internet because the race was that shit.
Yeah.
But then, my God, what just an absolute explosion of madness. I mean, you know how high I've been on Piastri.
Yeah.
And my God, I mean, we've got a World Drivers' Championship level driver, and he's an Alain Prost regen. I'm floored. I'm floored.
He's a special driver, and I think, like I said, after every race, everyone thinks even higher of him because he's just getting better and better and amazing us even more and more. And I said it at the time, right after his overtake. At the minute, you'd have to say he is the best overtaker in Formula One. He is doing some just out of this world overtakes. And these overtakes, they're overtakes that win you races. I mean, it's won him the race today. It would have won him the race 2 weeks ago if McLaren had done a one-stop strategy. That's the difference between, an elite driver and a very good driver. And that's why Piastri is absolutely, at the minute, an elite driver, because he's doing those things that make you that. So, yeah, I'm incredibly impressed by Oscar today. And yeah, top job.
I mean, for Christ's sake, he made Leclerc look like Bottas with his move at turn 1. Unbelievable move.
It was like it was like he was lapping a car. He just dived for the inside and took the corner. It was like, all right then. It was just so he made it look so easy. And I'm sure Leclerc would have been baffled by it, sat in the car. I mean, we'll hear what he has to say after the race, but yeah, that was just a stunning move. As there is Russell, who ended up on the podium, fortunately, because of that Sainz Perez crash. But I think Russell probably deserves a bit of fortune, because lately he's not been that been a bit unfortunate, I would say, with obviously last Grand Prix. That damage at the start maybe could have been a podium finisher at Monza. But yeah, good drive for Russell. Mercedes just weren't quick today, so they'll be very happy with the podium. But yeah, what a race. What a race. Right. I will read out a couple comments, and then I will finish up the results in the poll, and then we'll come to the end of this stream here. Willowford says Lando shouldn't be allowed on this poll. I thought he drove well, and maybe not perfectly. He could have maybe been a bit quicker in the first stint, but considering he beat Verstappen without the need of a safety car, I think he deserves a shout. But let me find some other comments here. Nicholas says McLaren versus Ferrari the next race, maybe. Yeah, I don't see why not. I mean, McLaren I'm expecting to be the quickest, but second quickest, I think at this rate, I'd probably say Ferrari, yeah. Because Red Bull, you still can't really have confidence in them. And Mercedes, you don't really know with Mercedes if they're going to be quick until you actually just see the practice results. And I think Mercedes are the same as well. I don't think they know if they're going to be quick until they actually turn up. So, yeah, I think probably, McLaren. But if there's going to be a two-team battle in Singapore, it probably will be the same again, McLaren versus Ferrari. But, Sam says, that move from Sainz is race ban worthy. I'm not sure he veered enough across enough for it to be like a clear penalty. You have to remember, and I think the drivers sometimes forget just how big and wide these cars are, and these streets in Baku, aren't as wide maybe as sometimes they think they are. So I think it's a racing incident. Thankfully, it's the two drivers are okay, but I'd probably say racing incident for that one.
I would say it's Sainz's fault, but I'm not too sure if they will give him a penalty or not.
No. If they do, it'll probably be like, 3-place drop, probably the next Grand Prix. Something like that, I'd imagine. But let me come to the end of this poll, as I think we've had enough votes considering who's far out in the lead. 23 votes. Who do you think driver of the day is for the Azerbaijan Grand Prix? And 56% of you clearly have gone for Oscar Piastri. And then 17% Norris, 13% Leclerc, and also Franco Colapinto. Nib, thank you so much for coming on for what's been a very tense but ultimately enjoyable race here in Baku. And even though I won't be doing a race watch along for Singapore, we'll see about when F1 comes back from pretty much another break. We'll see about you coming on again once we come back to the US Grand Prix. I know times are difficult, so you might not be able to, but we'll see how it all plays out. But yeah, cheers, massive cheers for you coming on today.
Of course, thanks, mate, and thanks for having me on as usual. And yeah, I mean, it's either at 4 or 6 a.m. for the American races.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is a bit tricky. So yeah, we'll see. But wow, I never expected the race to become that good after the first 15 laps. Unbelievable. And yeah, thanks everyone for your continued support.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys for the support, all the likes, new subscribers, all of that. Thank you guys so much. And make sure to subscribe for more content like this. Smash the like button before you go. Obviously, does help the channel grow. Just to let you guys know, tomorrow I will upload a podcast reviewing this Grand Prix and, talking about it in a bit more detail in terms of my review. And then next weekend to Singapore, I'm going to be doing a qualifying watch along. Won't be doing a race watch along, but then I will be doing a podcast review on the Monday of what happens in Singapore. So make sure to join me for all of that stuff. But guys, thank you for today. Thank you for this weekend. Again, make sure to subscribe, hit the like button. Make sure to join the Discord server as well. Link in the description and in the live chat. And guys, until my podcast tomorrow. And until the next Grand Prix on the calendar and my watch along for qualifying in Singapore next Saturday at around, I think, 12:30 p.m. UK time it should be. Until then, guys, it has been me, Chazza HD. Goodbye.